Hello, everybody, and welcome to the reading room for another debate dissection where Ember and I take apart and autopsy a random debate from across the interweb. So I'm so glad you can join me. And Ember, I realize you're running late and in transit kind of thing. So no pun intended. You're on the move. So how are you doing?
I'm all right. The internet's coming and going, but I'm okay. I am in mobile mode. Okay. I brought hopefully the better of the two headsets this time, but signal may get a little spotchy here and there. Okay. We do what we can.
That's okay. Bear with me. I'll bear with you. Absolutely. Not a problem at all. We kind of, this one, I usually you would be doing it. You knew that you'd be late home, so I sort of picked up on it. And First super chat. Oh, Barnaby, thank you so much. Thank you. 1 second. I am so unprepared. No, I'm here. I'm with it. Danger me, danger you, danger us. Barnaby Wild, danger person. That's where it's at. Barnaby Wild, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So if you're not mad this morning or tonight, you will be. This is so. I sort of talked briefly to Ember, sort of why I chose this debate, and it's because the arguments in it, they need to be addressed. And I don't feel like the atheist side, and you'll see that, did a very good job of addressing it. It's not entirely their fault, and I'll explain why when we go in. But it is the first time I saw this particular person kind of thing. Debate and sort of talk about intersubjectivity, and it's kind of very interesting and sort of very important that we have a discussion on it and know what it is, because I think it's very important. So it's basically a Jeff Durham, I think, and Durbin, yeah, Jeff Durbin. I've got to find where it is. There it is. Okay. So it's Jeff Durbin and Dr. James White debated Dr. Dean Chatterjee and Jared Anderson. It's Jared Anderson who is sort of better at the debate kind of thing. But I really want to point out just how bad the Christian side was. And what's interesting is that I saw it on a channel where a guy was doing a review talking how well they did. And I don't know how you can watch this and think that they did well, apart from just in mere rhetoric. And I'll kind of point out that. Was there anything else that we need to go through before we start this thing rolling?
Like, share, subscribe.
That too.
Do memberships. Yeah.
Yeah, so get your emoji fingers ready, because this one is worrisome, and I've been wanting to go through it for a while, and it's more so that if you encounter these arguments online, basically just a way to handle them or know what to say against them, because they are incredibly bad and very, very easily refuted. So
this is like battle training.
Yeah, exactly. And why they're terrible, why they're absolutely awful. And like sort of, so these guys are pre-sub and sort of, as we've said before, pre-sub not even once. Don't go there. It's absolutely terrible. But a lot of pre-sub is not to actually make coherent arguments about things. It's just to vex people, sort of frustrate people. So I think that the best thing you can do is not be frustrated. Jake, insert clap at that, but inside joke here. Nelson, member for 8 months. Thank you, Jake. I really appreciate it. To quote a perfect circle, Fuck your God. Yeah, so
I know that song.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying I know that song.
Oh, I don't. I must admit, I'm not a huge Perfect Circle fan, but that's the whole point. The precept would come back and say, "Well, no, it's our God," and you automatically, it's just so bad. But I'll start this rolling, and we can sort of see what I mean. So straight off the bat, what do you think he's going to talk about in April 1945 on an ethics debate? Any guesses? Any guesses in the chat?
Oh, I don't think the audio's coming through. I didn't hear anything anyway.
Oh, you didn't hear anything? Did anyone? Oh, okay. All right. I might have to duck out quickly and reset everything. So give me 1 sec. That is... StreamYard's been doing this, so I do apologize. Just give me 1 second.
And here I am without a pirate flag. Hello, everyone. We're having technical difficulties. This isn't my usual avatar because my phone wouldn't let me sign in on my Ember account. So this is the avatar from my photography studio account. I hope you enjoy. I am driving, so I could turn the camera on, but you'd be looking at my dashboard, so it would not help very much. But I hope y'all are having a swell evening.
Sorry about that. Technical issues. I was talking to the gang about the recent CloudStrike issue kind of thing, and I sort of looked into it a little bit because cybersecurity is definitely an area where I have occupied sort of before. Not that's not exclusively what I've done, but everybody that works in networking or has something to do with networking has some overview of cybersecurity. I mean, talk about an unforced error. It's probably the biggest screw up in cybersecurity in history kind of thing. If you're not familiar with it, that's okay. It's a very niche kind of thing to cybersecurity. Definitely audio share is on. Are you going to behave? Are you going to behave?
Well, good evening. I wish to invite you all to...
How's that?
Hey, here.
Sorry, you broke up there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I said I think so, because it was a little crackly on that. I heard I invite you.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it, mate.
Time travel with me this evening. We're going back to April 1945. We were traveling to a small town near Weimar in Germany.
Yeah. So any guesses what he's talking about? Germany, 1945. Straight off the gate.
It's weird that he says it's Weimar, because it's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
yeah,
it's
near VE Day.
Yeah.
It may even be VE Day. Honestly, I don't recall what VE Day was, but it was around about that time.
Starsong, member for 1 month. Thank you, Starsong. Last time I dissected anything, it was messy, and this time will be no different. I promise, mess galore. Look, I've never said this was a clean job. It's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it. Quite frankly,
that's why we do these in the reading room.
Yeah.
Captain Frederick Koffer is leading advanced patrol from the 6th Armored Division, a portion of the American forces, driving into Germany. He is the first to come across the Buchenwald concentration camp, located on a hill not far away from the quaint German town of Weimar. Together we stand before the barbed wire fence to look upon 20,000 emaciated, filthy prisoners, the survivors of the horror of Buchenwald. The world united to destroy the evil of the Nazi regime and only barely managed to defeat it. But tonight I have to ask us all here, what if the Germans had prevailed? What if they had...
Sorry, Ember?
Oh, I was just saying, well, because his hyperbole, it's not that the world barely managed to defeat it. It's, not to understate the military capability of Germany in that period of time, but they were significantly overstretched and up against
Oh yeah.
significantly superior forces. They were getting.
Yes.
It was sort of a testament to their military prowess that they lasted as long as they did.
Yeah, absolutely. And like they were falling back on conscripted teens and anybody they could shove into the front line. Like they were pretty well at that point. I mean, they had lost way before sort of, you know, the Americans had got to that point, or the, you know, Allied forces had got to that point. It's just it was being dragged out because they wouldn't surrender.
Yeah, and their ultimate leader made a whole lot of bad decisions. For instance, they invented the world's first jet fighter, and they were nearing completion on the stealth bomber. And the Fuhrer decided to use those for domestic defense instead of attack, which would conceivably have made it. If you've got planes that are so fast nothing else in the sky can catch them, okay, in fairness, there is one plane that could catch the Messerschmitt 262. It was the Messerschmitt 193, which was powered by a rocket. Like, it was an actual solid stage rocket.
Yeah, and sort of also the fact that Enigma had been cracked, and the Fuhrer refused to believe that anybody could crack Enigma, but it had been cracked, and had been cracked by Alan Turing and his sort of the original computer, basically, or original modern computer. He had cracked it.
Yeah, so lots of bad decisions on the part of German high command, which is probably why German high command kept trying to assassinate their leader, who's losing the war for them. Curses.
But sort of, so this and Jake pointed out, is this pre-Godwin's? It kind of is. It kind of is. It's like it's like an appeal to emotion. It's kind of saying, well, if Germany had won the war, would that be really wrong in your eyes? Yes. Morally, to me, that would have been wrong. It's why the world was fighting against them, because morally it was reprehensible. And left-handed Jedi is not wrong. A lot of people sacrificed to protect the fact that we cracked Enigma. Correct. What they did, and if anybody tells you that statistics are useless or meaningless or they've never helped us, they actually ran statistical analysis to basically calculate how many victories they could get without revealing that they had cracked Enigma. So they basically did statistical data analysis to go, okay, how far can we push using this information without showing that we have this information? Like, what would be in the margin errors of statistical sort of error? And then they also did things like to alter the odds. They made up, if you ever wonder where the idea that carrots give you good eyesight, it was invented by the Allies. It was propaganda put about that they had discovered that carrots give you good eyesight, and they were feeding their troops carrots. And the reason why is because they could change the probabilities of, knowing that a raid is coming by putting this information out there and having them believe, oh, maybe carrots give you a slight extra advantage. But in reality, they knew the raid was coming because they cracked Enigma, like the air raid kind of thing. So they did all of this stuff to alter the probabilities, like really fascinating. But left-handed Jedi is right that there were things they didn't respond to. They would let a convoy be sunk. They would let a outpost be raided because it fell within a margin of probability that it would seem too obvious if they knew everything was coming, right? So what they did was calculate the maximum impact for the minimum amount of casualties. But they still, there were casualties because they let them through, which ultimately is a very sort of utilitarian way of looking at it. It is sort of horrible when you look at it, but it shortened the war by years and probably saved millions of lives in the process. And that's one of the things we have to thank Alan Turing for. The man probably saved millions of lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Rembrandt, but eating lots of carrots are not going to improve your eyesight. Yes, vitamin A. Like if you don't get vitamin A, your eyesight will degrade. You know, it's like eating lots of carrots are not actually going to improve it above, you know, not having the deficiency in the first place. That's the point. They made that up.
Managed to get the atomic bomb and use it on one of their V2 rockets against, say, London. Clearly, world history would be completely different. But here is the question for us tonight. Would the horror of Buchenwald be any less wrong if the world never knew of its existence because everyone died and the people who perpetrated those horrors were victorious? We answer that question unambiguously and clearly tonight. Ethics and morality amongst mankind exist and can be known because men are made by God in his image.
Yeah, so this statement, we don't know, like we've got no counterfactuals for what would have happened if Germany had won the war. There's sort of, you know, there's a series about, I think, Man in the High Castle was an exploration of what would have happened kind of thing. And the world would be very different. Would the Nazi regime not be overthrown in the future? We don't know. We don't know. If a Third Reich was established that did control the world, would that be overthrown by, you know, people who have had enough of it? We don't know. It's impossible to tell. There is no counterfactual. The whole idea that it is wrong because God, you're kind of just begging the question. You're kind of just saying, well, God.
Yeah, they're overplaying their hand ridiculously.
Right. So even if you just say, well, you know, morality and ethics are not subjective, right? Just say that you believe that it's not subjective. There's other places to go, like, for instance, sort of evolutionary survival, for instance. It does not increase your survival chances to do these wanton acts of destruction. It doesn't. Because the rest of societies are going to turn on you, which is exactly what happened to Germany. I mean, they could not have a friend. Like, you know, everybody was against them, except for Japan.
There were a couple neutrals. I mean, Mussolini was on Germany's side. Not that that mattered.
Well, yeah.
Spain was friendly, but technically neutral.
Yeah, I mean, Spain was having its own issues with sort of communist elements stopping them. Italy, I believe Italy sort of changed sides a couple of times. Like Italy, but you're right. There were people on their side, but for the, you know, large section, I don't think that they would have remained on their side if they knew the scope of the genocide that they had caused. I don't think so, because even the German citizens don't know the scope of the genocide they caused. It's why Germany doesn't want to be the leader of the world stage, and things like doing a Nazi salute is illegal in Germany. That once they had realized that they were responsible for the greatest single atrocity in modern times, you know, people were not happy with that in Germany. You know, people were not going, well, he still did the right. That is not the feeling they got. They did not know. Well, yeah, I mean, Finland was more anti-Russia than pro-Germany, Rembrandt. But yeah, no, I get what you mean. Yeah. December 11, 1941, was that Pearl Harbor? Was that Pearl Harbor?
Or,
well,
was it December 11th or December 7th? My memory is fuzzy, but yeah, December 1941.
Well, in fairness, that was Japan, not Germany. You know,
right. But the series of events was Pearl Harbor happened. the United States declared war on Japan, Germany declared war on the United States, then Japan declared war on the United States, even though they'd already bombed us, detailed.
Yeah.
Every guard at Buchenwald was an image bearer of God, as was every victim. The guards and the perpetrators knew that what they were doing was evil from the start. They could not escape their createdness, nor the witness of the law of God written upon their consciences.
Then why did they do it?
Okay. Yeah. I remember that book that a journalist wrote, The Banality of Evil, where she interviewed one of the orchestrators of one of those concentration camps, and he was just a guy doing a job. A lot of the evils in this world are committed by people just doing their job, just following orders, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's literally the Nuremberg defense. That's the name it's called because of the War Crimes Tribunal following that war. They brought the people up on charges for their war crimes, and they went, just following orders. We still see that same kind of thing in the United States today, even though, at least when I went through high school, we did teach about the Nuremberg thing and how just following orders isn't a valid defense. Like when something like George Floyd happens, or you get people in various kinds of uniforms take the stand and just shrug and go, I was just following orders.
Yep. So a lot of the horrendous things, and I repeat this quote a lot, but Noam Chomsky said every single human has the capacity to be a saint and a gas chamber attendant, to look after, he didn't say this extra, that's what he said, and it's so true. People will be a good, upstanding citizen, looking after their friends and family, and being kind and generous, and commit atrocities to people who they see as other than them, who see them as something outside of the area of their association. And that's why we see people who are sort of, Christian, that go, oh, take care of your neighbors and feed the poor and all of this stuff, and then commit hate crimes against trans people. It's sort of this, people are complicated. It's not, well, it's written on your heart so you knew it was wrong even though you did it anyway. That is such a bad take on the nature of humanity. And it's so important that we don't just go, oh, well, they knew what they were doing was wrong. No, they didn't know what they were doing was wrong. They were following orders and believed that those orders were just and right. It's important to acknowledge that.
It did not matter that they were doing the bidding of the current government in charge in Germany. It did not matter their leaders had been proclaiming the Jews and others to be subhuman. What they were doing was objectively a moral evil, and the context could not possibly change that reality.
So objectively a moral evil. So where is this objective? How do we find this objective standard independent of other people's opinion? Right. So let's for a second. So, this sort of the Godwin's law of you go to the most stringent, horrible things. And it's because it rankles at us so much that human beings can do this, is why it feels like it ought to be, or it should be, or if things were fair, if things were just, if things were right, this would be objectively wrong. But is that the case? Is this independent of human perception? I think that there's a lot of things that sort of, it is not right to us that a child, is born and gets leukemia and dies. That is horrible, right? It shouldn't happen, and does. There's nothing objectively wrong about it. It just happens.
Yeah, nature doesn't care.
Nature does not care. And that's, but we do. But what I don't understand is, why isn't it enough that we care? He's like, oh, but if Germany won, then it would be fine. It wouldn't be fine by me. And it wouldn't be fine by a lot of people, even if they won. So I don't know.
Reality. We live in a time where the numbers killed by the Nazis are dwarfed by the massacre of innocent preborn children in plain-looking buildings safely tucked into our...
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. Preborn children. You mean embryos? Embryos or fetus is the correct word for that, but preborn, I don't think that's an preborn children.
Yeah, that's not a thing. I mean, the term abortion applies to a pregnancy that ends without birth. Like if a fertilized egg gets washed out in the normal monthly flow, that's a kind of abortion. It's a natural one. You don't need human interference, but it's still an abortion. Like, what the fuck is he talking about? Like George Carlin had a bit about this. People like him are saying that any woman who has had more than one period is effectively a serial killer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's apparently God doing it. So is God a serial killer? Does God kill?
Oh, we know God is he brags about it.
Well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know,
and the born ones, and
yeah. Well, I mean, at least they haven't said, you know, they kill children up to 9 months in the womb. Like, you know, it's so stupid. I think Trump himself said something about they kill children after they've been born, and it's like, no, what are you talking about? Abortion does not happen after the child is born. God, it's just so bad. So bad.
That was in the infamous debate. Yeah,
and I think
he has no idea how anything. All these people have no idea.
And I think I do have to say that these are the precepts. They're terrible precepts. They're so if you are feeling vulnerable, I do have to give sort of a trigger warning that they do have things that they say that are pretty reprehensible. So if you are feeling vulnerable or in a bad space, maybe do something that's better for your mental health. You know, I think that it's important for us to call out people like this, but I realize that not everybody wants to hear this kind of thing. So I just want to give a warning up front that what they say might make you very angry because it's kind of reprehensible what they do. Just thought I'd put that up there. I care about people's well-being.
You're more moral than these moral absolutists.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's so it's odd because they kind of will do anything to justify their belief in God. That they will do literally, they will say anything to anyone. It kind of reminds me of the Westboro Baptist Church, you know, protesting people's funerals in the name of morality. You know, it's so reprehensible. You're like, how did you get to this place? Like, how did you get to thinking that, you know, going to a soldier's funeral is a good idea and moral? Like, how does that fit with morality?
Our neighborhoods all across our nation. At the same time, our cultural insanity has overwhelmed us, where we now allow 8-year-olds to choose their gender and then proceed to mutilate their bodies and condemn them to a lifetime of disease and dysfunction. We cannot even attempt to answer the question, what is a woman or what is a marriage? Without being called a bigot or a hater.
Yeah. Dude who insists there is objective morality, but can't. The real irony here is that if you ask him to define a woman, there's a very good chance that he won't be able to answer. If he does, it'll almost definitely be parroting Matt Walsh. It's wild. And this whole thing about it goes without saying, all the audience here knows, but for the record, everything he just said about chopping up 8-year-olds, categorically not true. It just does not happen. It's pure propaganda.
Yeah, 8-year-olds getting surgeries is not happening, sir. That is a lie. That is an outright lie, which I thought was immoral, like bearing false witness. So that's not happening. right? That's not happening. He doesn't understand the difference between gender and sex, because he's sort of alluding that, sort of troubling. But it's interesting that what I would ask, and this is more what I want to aim it towards, how you would think. What I would ask is, sir, are you circumcised? Was a physical operation to change your body performed on you not only when you were 8, but when you were an infant baby, 6 months old? So who is really doing the mutilation of children here, right? Who is actually doing that?
It's big old projection. And also, he's bearing false witness, which he knows is objectively immoral, in order to spread lies, in order to further his agenda. Oops.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the last time I was contacted about this, like, somebody sent me, I think it was Jason Ezard from Praises thing, because Praises, they're just crazy. And he sent me a thing saying that, a girl of the age of 10 is getting surgery and being mutilated in Queensland, kind of thing. And you actually look into it, and all she did was insist on gender pronouns being changed in school. That's it. They can never actually come up with any data to back up these claims that children are getting surgery. They never can back it up. It's ridiculous. So number one, ask them for citations and sources where this is actually happening, because it's not true. Number two, show that they are the ones in fact doing this kind of thing. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Serious consideration of morality and ethics has been replaced by emotionalism and a permanently established state of childhood all across the academic landscape.
So notice he said emotionalism, and we'll get into this later, but that's very important. So he starts with the atrocities of the Germans. He goes to this emotional appeal about children being mutilated. Who is being the emotional ones here? Who is appealing to emotion, right? So this is a theme that will run all throughout their discourse of the other side is just emotional.
Challenge anyone's feeling,
immediately feeling.
Run for a safe space. Jeff Durbin and I stand here this evening to say unequivocally, Buchenwald was a moral nightmare, a clear violation of the standards God has built into his own creation. Likewise, the slaughter of innocent preborn children, the mutilation of born children, and the
citation like where in God's standards is that sort? Because we see, God not only wipe out the entire fucking world once, but then command his chosen dude to go do all the genocides and clear out all, like, God's standard, following God's example, says genocide is not only moral, it's godliness. You should be sainted for wiping out a whole group of people.
Yeah, so there was the Amalekites, there was the Midianites, I believe. There was a lot, of mass killings against other Canaanites, basically, and the rationale that was given is they're on your land that God has given you. That was the rationale. So
I've heard that one in other places.
Yeah, that you have a divine right to massacre the opposition. Yeah, I wonder who said that. That was actually Hitler that said that.
Feigning of the covenant of marriage are ethical disasters and great moral evils. But to many who have been raised in public schools over the past decades, the immediate objection comes to mind: who are you to decide these things? What if you offend someone with your views? What if someone claims to be hurt by your position? Doesn't that make you evil? Aren't morality and ethics just human constructs that
Yeah. Well, yeah. Left-handed Jedi with 5 readerships. I'll just quickly go through. So congratulations, Mark Stoney, Jason Hyatt, Andrew Christopherson, Jeff C, and Aragon. Thank you so much, Left-handed Jedi. I really appreciate it, mate. Winners all.
The force is
Thank
strong
you,
with
Jedi.
this one.
Indeed. Yeah, very kind of you. You're right. Yeah, and this sort of rhetoric is, well, what if you what if you are wrong? Well, what do you mean by wrong? I don't think there's moral facts, so you can't be wrong about morality. What there will be is ethical ways to either survive or not survive, right? There's going to be self-destructive actions. And while I don't think that self-preservation is an objective thing that you have to do self-preservation, it's pretty well ubiquitous throughout all organisms that they do try to self-preserve. That's pretty ubiquitous.
It is helpful, yeah.
Yeah, it is helpful. I think that if you do sort of give up pro-social behaviors for anti-social behaviors, very quickly you're kind of removed from the equation. That the only way we have been successful in our environments is pro-socially. Now, that does not include people outside of our social circle, right? So the others that we're talking about, and that's why othering people works so well for fascists and propagandists and these horrible people, because othering makes people seem like an outside threat. But
we did the same thing during World War II, especially. My grandfather used to tell me stories about killing the Nazis, and you grow up in that culture and you think, yay, glory to the war hero and all that crap. But when I got a little older, I said, I understand you had to win the war, but like you still had to kill people. And he was like, oh no, it's fine. They were just Nazis. It's not like they were real people.
Yeah. And I understand that sentiment kind of thing. I understand that because it's what has to happen in order to achieve what you're trying to achieve. I get that. But they also locked up Japanese nationals in concentration camps in America. Don't forget that. There was Japanese Americans who had done nothing wrong that were locked up. And it's one of the few issues I have against Marvel and their rewriting history. Like Marvel, the Captain America film had a Japanese American like locked up as a soldier. Japanese Americans did not fight on the American side. I'm really sorry, they didn't. It was not something that happened because they were all locked up.
Yeah, we actually deprived ourselves of several brilliant scientists, to say nothing of the moral horror of doing the same thing we're condemning Germany for. And yes, I know they weren't death camps, but we were practicing eugenics actively in other ways at the same time. But that's a whole other side story. But we had scientists and doctors and all these brilliant, highly trained people, and we just locked them away because their grandfather came from Japan, and so they might be on the emperor's side. It's fucking wild.
Yeah. Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
In history is going to be altered and changed by polls.
You're going for coffee? Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Polls and elections. To these objections, we respond with clarity. Morality and ethics require a standard from outside the human realm. And that standard has been provided to us and preserved for us in the Christian scriptures. We do not flinch for a second at the trained response of the public schooled mind to such a claim. It has become dogma in our day that all religious claims are mythical in nature and are subordinate to science. It is even more outrageous, we know, to not only say God is required as the source of morality and ethics, but the specific triune God of the Christian faith. How exclusive. But of course, we do not even stop there. No, as audacious as it is in the early 21st century in the United States, we stand here.
Okay, yeah, no, I got into a correction. Apparently there was 4 segregated US Army units. And they did serve honorably. And they were Nisei, which is second generation, I think. That means like they weren't born in America. In Japan, they were second generation.
Oh,
so
cool. Yeah, That's Japanese. Issei is first generation, Nisei is second generation, Yansei is third, and Sansei is fourth. I didn't realize they did that. That's cool.
But that doesn't alleviate the fact that there were concentration camps for Japanese Americans. Okay, so 1944, they were released under Korematsu versus United States. Okay. No, that's fair enough, Rembrandt. I thanks for bringing that to attention, mate. That's something I did not know. It's a plot point of the Karate Kid. Okay, I haven't seen the latest season. I don't know. I felt like season 2 of Karate Kid wrapped it up so well. I don't know. I don't know what the third season is about, but I thought it had a great ending. So yeah.
This evening to proclaim to all who will hear, there is an empty tomb in Jerusalem, and because it once housed a beaten and broken corpse, but only briefly, and then gave up that corpse the unstoppable power of new life, resurrection life, we now live in the light of that empty tomb. The one who arose is seated at the right hand of the Father on high, where he has been exalted as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And this historical event, supernatural as it is, has changed forever this world and everything in it.
So is that history? No, absolutely not. That is mythology. There's no historical empty tomb. No one's found the empty tomb. Even if they did, how would you tell it is Jesus's tomb? It's a tomb with nothing in it. There's so many problems with what he is saying. This is a faith-based statement. He has faith that the tomb existed and that it's empty. I don't understand this rhetoric, because it's about morality is because the tomb we haven't found exists. And you'll get a lot of this from Prisa. It's important to go back and question, how did we know that this tomb is empty? That is not being what's asserted, though, Mark Stoney. And it's not Jesus that changed the world, in my opinion. It's the belief in Jesus that changed the world. Is that for the better? Possibly not. It's hard to tell, because if events unfolded differently, we've got no counterfactual for that. Would slavery have happened if people didn't use the Bible to justify it? I don't know. Possibly not. If the Enlightenment got more steam and didn't sort of peter out and sort of promoted humanism more, would slavery have happened? I don't know. I don't think so. There were, like, a lot of Enlightenment thinkers were vehemently opposed to slavery. I don't know. But it doesn't seem to me like Jesus did anything. It's the belief in Jesus that did a lot of things, and not necessarily good things. Would the AIDS crisis would have been as bad if the Catholic Church didn't stop and tell everybody in Africa that condoms were evil and would damn you to eternity? I don't know. It could have been just as bad. It could have been less bad. It's so hard to say with history, oh, well, if this didn't happen, then automatically this other thing would happen. It's so hard to say. All we can say is that this is what happened in the past. Thank you so much, Kata. And Twiggy says hello. Hello to Twiggy. Twiggy is the goat. Literally the goat. Yeah, I don't know.
It should be obvious to all of us that if indeed that tomb is empty, as it is, and if indeed
as it is, yeah, no, that's a fact there. He has no fact to prove that. He's just stating it. And you'll see this kind of and I want to be very clear about what this is. This would fall under the category of dogmatic assertion. So it is an assertion that you make that you won't even question the foundation for. You won't even ask why you believe that. It is dogmatic. It is true because it is true. Yeah, absolutely, left-handed. Saying a thing doesn't make it real. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's basically it. And we call those dogmatic assertions. Just assertions that are never even attempted to justify because it's true, because it's true, because it's true.
That one who predicted his own death, burial, and resurrection not only accomplished these acts, but has ascended on high. We need to know how we must live in light of this history-forming reality. Do we just keep on keeping on, doing as we please? Or must we seek to know what this divine judge demands of us? It is the Christian message that we can indeed know his standards and his law, and hence every moral and ethical system must be brought into line with that law.
Okay, so the claim there is we can know his standards and law. So the problem here, as I've pointed out before, is even if there is some kind of objective moral implementation, like God, just say God implements some kind of moral law on the universe, like puts it there, that would still be subjective. But just say it's objective. Just say he creates something like sort of concrete that is a moral framework in every real sense. Like it's an objective thing that will exist without any minds to behold it. It's independent of any mind, right? Just say that he does somehow, right? Just through magic or through miracle or through whatever you want to say. Even if he did that, the problem with knowing what it is that we're relying on a Bible that's the interpretation of what God has said to them or inspired in them. And then you've got interpretations of the Bible. So you still have problems knowing what the objective moral law would be, even if it existed. And we don't know if it exists. That, in fact, there's a lot of good reasons to suggest it does not exist, like this overarching moral framework somehow. But I'm pointing out that even the Christians all disagree, and there's so much moral disagreement out there because they can't agree on what this objective moral standard is. That even if there is an objective moral standard, you can't get to it objectively. It has to be a subjective interpretation. So it's very difficult to say, well, you can know his objective moral standard. Can you? It just happens to be whatever that, Dr. White here, whatever his version of it is, his interpretation of it is the objective one. Welcome back, Ember.
I think, yeah, I lost signal there for a
Long ago,
second.
one of Jesus' disciples, Paul, stood before the Greek philosophers at the Areopagus and uttered these amazing words, quote, "Therefore God, having overlooked the times of ignorance, is now commanding all men everywhere to repent, because he has fixed a day in which he will surely judge the inhabited world in righteousness by a man he has appointed, having furnished proof to all by raising him from the dead." We must feel the weight of this announcement even this evening. The resurrection of Christ from the dead is provided to all men, including all of us here, as evidence of the fact that there is a day fixed when God will judge the entire inhabited world.
Yeah, so you haven't demonstrated that Jesus has risen from the dead or done anything of the sort. He's just asserting that to be the case, and Paul was asserting it. So you're basically using Paul's assertion as evidence, which it isn't. Like, just because Paul said it in front of a bunch of people doesn't make it true.
All who have ever lived or are living or will live. He will do so justly, in righteousness, and he will do so by the one who lived a perfect life, gave that life on Calvary's tree, and rose again the third day. If judgment is so central to God's purposes, as the scriptures reveal over and over again, then the standard by which that judgment will be made must be clearly known. And it is clearly known. No.
Thank you all so much for being here and sacrificing
clear?
your time and attention to this vitally important.
Apparently not.
It's not very clear to me, and a bunch of what he said there is really self-contradictory.
Yeah.
Like, the thing about, oh, well, there will be a judgment. We know because of the thing. Okay, but the prophecy that said there would be a judgment said the judgment would happen within that same generation, and that didn't happen. So, I don't know, maybe I'm silly, but that kind of disqualifies the entire prophecy. Also, he talks about perfect life. Well, what do you mean by that? Because we're going to use the scripture as our entire witness. what's perfect? What's perfect? Because he throws a fit and chases people with a whip, and it just. What do you mean, my guy?
And this whole idea that humans just know morality, then why do we have to teach it to our children? Why don't we just let them do whatever and they won't go morally wrong? Why do we have to impart this knowledge on children of what's right and wrong?
Why do we need, evangelists if knowledge of God is written on everybody's heart, as the Bible states? Then everyone should already know God. Oh, well, we're denying God in our unrighteousness. Great. But being an apologist isn't going to change that. Who are you talking to if everyone already knows about Jesus?
And just quickly, I find it hilarious. The Shroud of Turin, it was dated to the middle. It was carbon dated to the Middle Ages, not back to sort of ancient times. Like that's the thing. The Vatican have it under lock and key. They have not. The Vatican has not confirmed the authenticity of the shroud, nor have they denied the authenticity of the shroud. So you would think the people that have it, they'd be the first to say, hey, it is real, if it were real. But instead, they've just sort of locked it away and they won't let anybody evaluate it scientifically.
Now it's a scam. It's the same. First of all, even Kent Hovind can refute the shroud. That's hilarious to me. The man who denies all science and etc. He uses the Bible to do it. The Bible can refute the shroud, but that's a total side thing. It's just hilarious to me that Kent can refute it. We've known since the shroud was discovered that it was a fake, because the artist who painted it told a bishop, and the bishop wrote to the Pope and said, here's this really cool fake that's getting really, really popular. I just thought you should know so people don't start, blaspheming by worshiping an art piece. And so they've known the entire time. And that letter is in the French Museum. Anyone can go look.
Yeah, it's basically that but the Vatican, I think, is appalling in the way that it won't confirm or deny it, kind of thing, because the Vatican,
people will give them money.
People will give them money, yeah, and it bolsters people's faith who believe in it. But if you actually, if you're a reporter and you press the Vatican on it, they will sort of say, we neither confirm nor deny that this is the Shroud of Jesus Christ,
which is very dishonest, since they know, and that's kind of the core. We humanists, we skeptics, as a general rule, we don't actually care what other people believe. If somebody wants to worship a leprechaun, fantastic. But when you start using your mythology and your nonsense to try to force other people to live in a certain way, now we have to have a conversation about how do you know that's what your made-up imaginary friend wants. And they don't often deal with that. And when they're so blatantly dishonest that they know a thing is false, but they will not come out and say it, how can you believe when they say anything else, well, this is the truth? They have no claim that they're the last people on earth who have a claim to the word truth.
Yeah.
Important subject. I want to personally ask you all to pay very close attention this evening, not only to what is coming out of our mouths, that is the claims that we're making, the things that are coming out of us, but what we are standing on or carrying into the debate.
Yeah, so prepare to be mad, because this guy is terrible. And sort of, he's already acknowledged that they're going to make claims, right? Not sort of the sort of ontologically true things or the objectively true things, but they're going to be making claims, and oh boy, are they going to be making claims. But they're not going to frame them as claims. They're probably going to they're going to frame them as absolute truths.
This debate this evening isn't summarized in the piecemeal arguments or attempts at particular evidences or claims made by either side. This debate is a collision of total life and worldviews. That is to say, both sides are carrying bags into this discussion. These bags are the underlying assumptions or presuppositions that come from our worldviews. They are either bags filled with cash that we can justifiably spend to purchase the emotions that we draw on when decrying evil or calling anything evil, or on our appeals to logical consistency we demand, or the necessary rules to have integrity and not lie to you in this debate, or the appeals made to human value and dignity. Just consider what's happening in front of us all.
Yeah.
So he's kind of confessing to being bankrupt. His metaphor, within context of the metaphor, is literally true. He's a bankrupt interlocutor. Awesome.
It gets worse, but yeah, he's kind of, and he's kind of poisoning the well, sort of saying, "Hey, the opponents are this, that, and the other. They're coming in with this." He's poisoning the well. He's not making a case for his side. He's trying to poison the other side, which is kind of very, very dodgy debate tactics. But this man, I sort of watching this over, sort of editing it down, he is so dodgy. His debate tactics are terrible.
Oh, yeah. Remember what Matt Dillahunty said about precepts? How they're so predictable. I predict, because I've heard this exact intro from other precepts before, I predict at some point he's going to say, our Jesus bag is full of cash, whereas our opponents have none, and they have to reach into our bag to pull out cash to spend on their arguments.
Mm-hmm.
It's how it always goes.
Yep.
Brave to enter into a public debate attempting to provide a foundation for ethics from their worldview. Here we have two men who are variously identified as devout atheists, humanists, who have claimed that there is absolutely nothing supernatural. That is, nothing outside of the natural, physical, or material universe, who believe that humans exist on a continuum of purposeless, meaningless, time and chance acting on matter. Human beings, according to their most basic ontology or metaphysics, are the descendants of bacteria and fish, alongside other random results of evolutionary processes.
Okay, so this is just a dog whistle for anti-evolution science deniers, and it's just an appeal to emotion. They don't like they don't like that evolution is a thing, and that's okay. You can not like that evolution is a thing, but it's just a natural process that we've discovered. Like, it's not like it you can feel about it however you want, but that's no reason to base what is true on your feelings about evolution. You know, so when we look at what is true and what is not true, there should be some better methodology than how I feel about it. And that's why it is ironic that these people are saying, well, they just, you know, they get all emotional, because they are doing appeals to emotion. They're dog whistling, they're attacking things that people don't like in order to make them feel righteous about things. It's an appeal to emotion.
And the red herrings. Because what the hell does evolution have to do with morality? Like, okay, yes, you explain morality as a function of social evolution, but you don't even need to go there. Why is he bringing it up, aside from to red herring, to lay down a false trail?
Yeah.
We are bags of purposeless stardust, to quote Carl Sagan, one of their patron saints.
That is not.
That's not a quote.
So that's not a quote. And what he's doing is, so Carl Sagan said we had no intrinsic purpose. We give purpose to our lives, right? Like, he isn't saying that we are purposeless. He's saying that purpose derives from ourselves, what we want to accomplish, what we want to do, and not from the universe. He said that the universe is purposeless, not us. So he's just sort of absolutely lying about what Carl Sagan says. Nobody says that humans are purposeless. But
I have a fun drinking game.
Yeah.
If somebody on the precept side actually says a thing that is true, this is a rule in Dapper's drinking games. If the apologist says a thing that actually is true, because it's so rare, you have to take a drink.
Right. Is that a drinking game? That's a joke. That suggests that Neville will say anything true. Because if you're not drinking, never mind.
Yeah.
Cosmic broccoli, as another atheist, Dan Barker, has claimed. Meat bone protoplasm in a cosmos that doesn't care about us. They're brave bringing those bags in here, trying to justify and argue that their worldview can provide a cogent philosophical justification or a warrant for their claims.
Yeah, so he's mistaking the idea that the universe doesn't seem to have a purpose with the humans don't have purpose, that we don't have something that we're trying to do. So he's sort of confusing the indifference of the universe with the indifference of humans. Why should we have indifference like the natural world does? I don't know why he's sort of going, well, these people say that the universe has no purpose, therefore we have no purpose.
He's saying the universe has no purpose himself. He's saying the only purpose is God. So the universe itself, no purpose, no point, aside from maybe being God's plaything or whatever. But it's the same projection. It's what he believes being cast onto the other person as if it were a bad thing. You're saying life is pointless, and that's bad. That's what he believes. Life is just the time you have to kill before you go spend eternity with God or in hell, whichever the case may be. But what you do in this life, aside from sucking Jesus's dick, is completely pointless.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just sort of, it's more a testing ground for the next life kind of thing, that you're just here momentarily while you're tested to see whether you get an entry into the next place or not.
They don't have the cash to spend in those bags, the cash necessary to make meaningful appeals to your emotions, to appeal to human value and dignity, to appeal to universal, immaterial, unchanging, and necessary laws of logic, or absolute and transcendent ethical laws.
Yeah. So he's basically just doing the precept thing, which is all laws, or everything depends on God, or all laws of logic, all coherence, everything depends on God. Now, he's not going to justify that at all. He's going to presuppose it to be true, and then, just basically carry on as if it were true.
Mm-hmm. I love that he outright says, you need this capital to make appeals to emotion. Like, just he lays out the game plan. We're appealing to emotion. That's what we're doing here today.
Yep.
Absolute standards of morality or ethics do not comport with their view of the world and humans. Their worldview is bankrupt. They don't have the money to spend with you all tonight. However, they will make claims. They'll assume human value and dignity, the demand for honesty in this debate, the principle of induction, or the uniformity in nature to examine evidence and trust the basic reliability of sense perception, and they'll demand the need for consistency and holding to the law of non-contradiction. However, in doing so, what they'll be doing is sneaking their hands into our bags.
Really? So it's basically, even though the laws of logic have been known way before Christianity, that the laws of logic were around Aristotle time.
Yep.
It's this. Well, we're going to claim them for our religion, and no, you can't use them without acknowledging our religion is correct. And this is the precept sort of silliness that we get into. It would be like if I said, well, I'm going to claim that leprechauns created all coherence in the universe. And now you can't say anything or do anything without acknowledging my leprechauns. That is how stupid this tactic is.
Oh, but it's even better. There's a second layer of irony, because these precepts generally are also Trinitarians, which means they expressly do not believe in the law of identity curses. I was saying that they specifically do not believe in the laws of logic.
Yeah, well, I mean, no, they do, but they do special pleading. They're like, the laws of logic are absolute except for God. That's the thing that it doesn't apply to. And why? Who knows? Who knows? It's sort of this really weird sort of special pleading that they exempt God from their own stuff, because how can one thing be three things at the same time? We don't know. Nobody knows how that works.
Exactly.
Like the Trinity, nobody knows how it's that works. But yeah, it's sort of this idea of, well, you're drawing from my worldview that is so obnoxious because they do not have a monopoly on reasoning or logic or coherence or thought. They don't.
To borrow capital from the Christian worldview that they don't have. I want to encourage you to wash their hands this evening, because stealing is wrong from the Christian worldview. Watch for the unjustified claims, the appeals to emotions that don't belong to the descendants of bacteria, the claims that contradict their most basic worldview assumptions. Watch them as they act like there are things that humans ought to do and ought not to do. Our esteemed opponents have agreed to show up to a fight without the worldview credentials to do so. Respectfully, you don't need Christian ministers to tell you that. Dr. Will Provine, the now deceased...
The worldview credentials. And who gives these credentials? These Christians. They're the ones asserting that we don't have credentials to do it. It's so... And this is what pre-sup is designed to do. It's just designed to make you angry, to like go, well, no, that's absolute rubbish. Really, if you encounter this in a debate or discussion, really you should be going back to, well, you've made a claim. You've made a claim that your God is necessary for all of these things. Prove that to be the case, right? To prove it to be the case. You've said that the laws of logic are dependent. They originate from God, and only God can give you the laws of logic. How do you demonstrate that? Because it is totally fine to reject that claim. That is not a presupposition. Is just an unfounded claim. That's all it is. But a presupposition assumes that you don't have a foundation for it, because if you had a foundation for it, it wouldn't be a presupposition. It would be based upon something. So, for instance, somebody's going out for the night, and you can presuppose they are going on a date, kind of thing. There's no reason why you believe that. If you have a justified reason, if you can say, hey, you put on these nice clothes, you did all of this, it wouldn't be a presupposition, right? A presupposition is entirely unjustified. Hello, welcome back.
Hello.
And so you will get a lot of this from presups, just basically saying, we assert this, and therefore it is true. We presuppose this, therefore it is true. And that never follows, ever. Even things that we presuppose, like our senses are correct, that our senses describe the world, that largely is a presupposition. There's no way you can absolutely determine that your senses are describing anything. But we have a high confidence in it, but we don't declare it absolutely true. We have a confidence in it because we have to, and B, it appears to be raw sensory input coming into us. But we don't say it's absolutely true.
And renowned professor of biological sciences at Cornell University, a man who shared their worldview, he held the same bags as them, once said, quote, "Let me summarize my views on what modern evolutionary biology tells us loud and clear. And I must say that these are basically Darwin's views. There are no gods, no purposeful forces of any kind, no life after death. When I die, I am absolutely certain that I'm going to be completely dead. That's just all. That's going to be the end of me. There is no ultimate foundation for ethics."
He did not say there's no ultimate foundation, but I mean, what does he mean by ultimate foundation? Like, just because there's no ultimate foundation doesn't mean you can't have ethical systems that help us in pro-social behaviors, that help us survive, that help us thrive, that help us flourish. Like, there's no ultimate foundation for law either. I don't, he's just sort of saying, hey, this guy says universe doesn't care, therefore morals don't exist under your worldview. No, that's not what anybody is saying. The universe doesn't care what kind of ice cream you like either. It doesn't mean that you don't taste good ice cream when you have it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you haven't demonstrated why we need a god or some kind of objective moral thing in order for morals to be useful or for morals to achieve what they're meant to achieve.
I wonder if there's a certain arrogance tied up in this. Because when you were talking about ice cream, it made me realize that the universe doesn't care about ice cream because it's completely fucking trivial. The same is true of what humans consider moral on the scale of the universe, on the scale of the galaxy, on the scale of the solar system. Like, the asteroids don't care what we think is moral. The comets don't care. Jupiter and its moons do not care. It's absolutely, I mean, none of those things are capable of caring. But let's assume for a moment there's something beyond humans that is capable of caring. It still wouldn't care because it's trivial. It's as trivial as ice cream flavors.
But it's not trivial to us. That's the point.
Right.
Like, it is important to us because we're the ones who have to navigate through this world. And so the best way to navigate through this world is in a socially cooperative way. It is the best way if you want to navigate successfully. So we create these moral systems because we have to work together. And it is a model for doing that. But they're sort of like, well, then it's not important. No, it's incredibly important to us. It's just not important to the universe. That's all. I don't know why they don't understand that.
No ultimate meaning in life and no free will for humans either, unquote. Dr. Provine was correct. He was being honest about what his atheistic presuppositions lead to, although as an atheist, he didn't have to be. According to Provine, our atheist and humanist opponents don't have justifiable right to appeal to ethics in any meaningful or ultimate way. They have no warrant to appeal to any ultimate meaning in life.
Yeah, so it's basically that sort of thing, the William Lane Craig thing of, well, if you don't have objective morality, it's not real morality. And it's like, what leads you to believe that? What's the justification for that? That's like saying if laws aren't objective, then they're not real laws. What?
Yeah, it kind of strikes me as that agnostic thing, right? How, you know, often we'll debate with theists and they'll be like, well, you're not really an atheist because you don't know there is no God. You're more of an agnostic because you don't know for sure. Right, technically true. But that's also true for you too, Mr. Theist, unless you're claiming you have actually met God, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Nor do they, given that they are simply cosmic accidents whose brains are just doing what their biochemical responses do under these conditions, have any philosophically coherent right to think that they are thinking in any meaningful way. They're just dancing out their DNA, as Dawkins has said. On the one side tonight, cosmic broccoli.
Well, that's, again, an argument from consequence. You're basically going, well, I don't like it if we're just products of determinism without free will, that we're just going through what has been genetically programmed, and I'm using that word very loosely, programmed into us by evolution, right? That I don't like that. Well, I don't care what you like. What we want to have happen is to believe things that are true, in true as in the real sense of, you know, what comports with reality in that context of true, to quote Matt Delahunty. So, you know, it doesn't matter. You can not like it all you want. You know, it's like saying, well, I don't like it that, you know, if we're just dancing through our DNA, then I've got to go pee, you know, every so often kind of thing. Well, yeah, but you not liking that has nothing to do with whether that is true or not. If we are just dancing out our DNA, it doesn't matter if you don't like it. That's not an argument.
It's such a weird argument, too.
It's an appeal to emotion again. You're saying, well, you wouldn't like it if, you know, all you're doing is going through the motions based upon your sort of genetic programming in very, very deep quotes, and you know, your psychological state based upon, you know, your experiences. You wouldn't like that, so don't believe it. That's all it is. It's a trickery.
It's dumb trickery too, because like, if you really think about what that means, your DNA coded for a biological machine capable of limited self-repair, relatively advanced perception.
You're breaking up again, Ember.
Survival. So, to get all mad, if we're following our DNA, then we have the ability to think for ourselves. I don't know. That sounds like a good thing to me.
I think thinking for ourselves and having reasonable choices that we can make is incredibly, it sort of improves our survival chances immensely, I would imagine. I think that being able to sort of cognitively take actions based upon reason and intellectual process rather than just instinct is incredibly beneficial for us. I think that is the reason why humans are so successful. So I don't know why it would be something that we can't do, but there's also disagreement between scientists whether we do have, you know, true free will or not. Like, that isn't settled. He's just quoting somebody because he wants the quote. Sure, he may
loves the cherry pick.
He might believe that you know, we're entirely composed of what our DNA does, and we have no free will. Not all scientists believe that way, and that certainly is not settled science yet. So I don't know why he's just appealing to one person and cherry picking, one sort of quote to make him seem better. But my question would
to rule them all.
Well, my question would go back to, well, why can't you demonstrate this God is responsible for all logic? And if he says there's no other option, you're like, well, what about a magic unicorn? What about something else that is hidden, we can't see? You know, he is not justifying anything he's saying. He's just saying it. They're just claims. That's all they are.
On the other side, image bearers of God, of the true and living God, the only eternal God, human beings with value, dignity, and purpose, who reflect the glory and power of the triune God of Holy Scripture. Make no mistake, we are not neutral, and neither are our opponents. We're not arguing for a general form of theism to justify morality or ethical appeals. As a matter of fact, we would happily join our opponents in refuting those other claims of general theism. We freely confess to carrying bags in here tonight as well. So what's in our bags? Our bags are filled with real value and philosophical currency. We have treasure.
What's the opposite of poisoning the well, where you basically, you know, masturbate yourself on stage? Because that's what he's doing right now. He's saying, hey, because we're right, our bags have all of this treasure inside it, while our opponents have nothing. It is the worst debate tactic I have seen ever. It's basically just saying, well, our opponents are stupid and we're fantastic. Thank you. I rest my case.
Yeah, it's when you can't demonstrate what you're trying to say. You just claim the thing. And claims are as good as arguments, which are as good as evidence, apparently. But holy crap, plagiarism. I don't know if that counts as false witness, but I am sure I have heard this opening speech before. Like, right down to the calling what's in the bag treasures. I don't know if somebody stole it from them or they stole it from somebody else. But holy crap, they have one script.
Mm-hmm. Like, it is just sort of stroking your own ego to sit there and go, well, my worldview has all of this stuff and our opponents have none. It's not an argument. It's just an assertion of superiority. And all of this is based upon his presupposition that God is the foundation for everything. So he's basically saying, hey, their arguments are based upon God as well. It's just an assertion. It's dogmatic assertion. And you'll see that as we go along.
To offer you. We are claiming that the Christian God revealed in Holy Scripture is a necessary foundation for justified true belief regarding all ethical claims. Without the Christian God, you can't prove or justify anything. Reject his revelation in history, and you become a fool, intellectually and morally. If you want certainty in the realm of ethics, you need Jesus, friends.
If you want certainty. So
if you want to pretend to know anything, wow.
Right. Well, it's funny because, you know, there's a lot of people in Islam who have certainty and morality as well, right? Certainty doesn't, like, you can be 100% certain. It doesn't mean that is the truth. He's mixing up sort of ontology with epistemology at the moment. Like, well, if you're more certain, then you're more right.
Good point.
No, that doesn't follow. That does not follow.
Yeah, we were 100% certain that Newton was correct until Einstein came along.
Correct. And you know, you can be 100,000 times certain that God is responsible for morality. It doesn't make you right. It just means that you're really, really certain. I could be 100 million times certain that God does not exist. It doesn't make me right. There has to be something else for me to show apart from my own personal certainty. But he's appealing to emotion. He's saying, well, if you believe them, there's all this uncertainty. If you do what I say, you're going to be certain and completely certain about it. How is that a good thing? How is certainty a good thing if you are wrong?
Its simplicity is fantastic until you find yourself on trial in Nuremberg at being asked, where was the nuance, my guy?
Yeah.
Without him, salvation isn't possible, and without him, neither is knowledge. The claim of Scripture is that in Christ are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. God and his character are the necessary transcendent reference point for meaningful claims or appeals to ethics. God is
okay, so think about what he just said. He said the transcendent God is necessary for claims or appeals to ethics, right? Is he going to justify that?
No, of course not.
Of course he isn't going to justify that.
But it's also fascinating for a couple of other reasons. Like, it's self-contradictory in a couple more ways. One being, if it's not possible to have justified true belief without Jesus, then what the fuck was up with Moses? How could Moses say anything about the law that Jesus followed, by the way, if he didn't have Jesus? But that's just
or Noah or any
one of many, many problems.
David or Solomon or any of the leaders of sort of, you know, Israel religion before Jesus. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, he would probably, and to steelman them, I hate steelmanning precepts. I feel like a moron, but he would probably say that Jesus pre-existed from beginning of time, and he only came down to earth on, you know, during that time. So Jesus still existed, and, you know, they sort of still needed Jesus for, I don't know.
Oh, like no,
I feel so dumb.
Yeah, you're not wrong. They like to use that passage from John, you know, the Word was with God and the Word was God and all that crap, because somehow Jesus is a word, however the fuck that's supposed to work. But the thing of it is if you know, ask Abraham has never heard of fucking Jesus. Abraham just did what Yahweh said. And also, Yahweh didn't... Abraham didn't know anything about transcendental, non-existent, existing but not logically incoherent bullshit. He talked to God face to face. That's how it went. That wasn't, you know, it wasn't poetry. It wasn't a metaphor. It was the story. That was how it went. And so when he tries to make this argument that his God is a transcendental, mythical God who cannot exist at all within reality by definition, then he's calling Abraham a liar.
Mm-hmm.
Changing eternal sovereign God. he has revealed himself clearly and without confusion through the natural order, through his prophets and apostles in history, and supremely in the incarnation, when the second person of the Trinity condescended, took on flesh, walked among us, lived a perfect, righteous, and truly ethical life that we have failed, died for sinners, and conquered death as a matter of historic record.
Yeah, so
historic record.
this is
Okay.
preaching. This is preaching. And yeah, it's not historical record.
God of the Bible is the principium. His revelation is the reference point. He does not appeal to a standard outside of himself. His law is a reflection of his own eternal and unchanging
Doesn't he
character.
though?
Righteousness and justice are met.
Sorry?
Doesn't he though? Like, I'm thinking, I quote this, well, I reference this all the time, but it comes up a lot. When Moses was up on Mount Ararat with the Spirit of Yahweh receiving the law, and the golden calf thing happened, and Yahweh was going to smite all the Israelites. He was like, these people pissed me off, they're done. And Moses said, Lord, Lord, think about what the other gods will think. Consider their feelings and how they'll look at you if you do that. So isn't Yahweh appealing to thoughts and feelings and moral conclusions outside himself in the fucking Bible?
Well, and he said that it's unchanging, which, like, we know that God in the Old Testament, or Yahweh, was vengeful and you know, angry and judgmental and all of this stuff, but he wasn't in the New. So how is he unchanging?
Yeah,
I don't
it's
understand
part of that whole. It's another presupposition. Frankly, it comes from this one. I actually know where it comes from. It's the integration of some of the Hellenistic philosophies. It's the idea of perfection. Right. To be perfect, you cannot change. Even though we see God changing, we have to assert that God cannot change, because if God changes, he cannot be perfect. And we can't have that. To be the best God ever, he has to be perfect. So we're just going to ignore the obvious fact that he changes and just declare something that's demonstrably not true by fiat, as if we were fascists. Fascist religion, hooray! Celestial North Korea. Let's sign up, guys.
Well, I mean, Christopher Hitchens has always compared Christianity or God in general to a North Korea kind of thing. I think that it's very apt, like somebody that's always watching, always, you can't escape, has all these powers that you cannot hope to, the parallels are actually quite scary with how they instill fear in North Korea to how these religions instill fear in what they do. Like, watch what you're doing, or else our glorious leader will see, and then you'll be in trouble.
Measured and revealed by him. Abandon that at your own philosophical peril. Abandon him and lose any meaningful or coherent appeals to ethical responsibilities or anything transcendent.
So here's the thing. He's basically trying to smuggle in this meaningful. So what does meaningful actually, what does he mean by that? Because he's trying to equate things without an objective standard, like morals without an objective standard, to non-meaningful. And that might be true in relation to the universe. It might not be meaningful to the universe, but it's meaningful to us. So it has meaning. I don't know why it needs it. It's like saying, well, that book isn't meaningful to the universe, therefore it has no meaning. Well, of course it has meaning. It has a great deal of meaning. You look at some of the books that are written out there, they do have meaning. It's just, it doesn't mean anything to the objective universe. That's not a reason why they don't have meaning. He's trying to smuggle that in there and saying, well, if it only has meaning to humans, it doesn't have meaning, but it has meaning to humans. What?
Yeah, it's again with the self-contradictory. He's outright saying the opposite of what he says he's saying. It's wild.
Yeah. It's incredibly dishonest. He's sort of just smuggling in these terms to say meaningless. it has meaning to me, it has meaning to you, it has meaning to other people, so it does have meaning. So it's not meaningless. That's just a bold-faced assertion with nothing to back it up.
Unless the word meaningless itself is meaningless when he uses it.
I mean, maybe that's like the literally meaning metaphorically kind of, stuff going on there, quite frankly. It's
all appeals to ethics, apart from God, as the reference point, are meaningless and incoherent. Let's take a look at an example. Just this week, a wicked and murderous woman who lived pretending to be a man, named Audrey Hale, went armed to a Christian school and murdered 6 innocent human beings, including 3 small children.
Okay, so this is sort of when this came out, and so this is just appeals to emotion. It's dog whistling, essentially. It was the Nashville shooter of 2023, I think it was. So and so they will find these one instances. Like, he's not talking about the mass shooter that went in say Florida at the gay nightclub kind of thing. No, he's not bringing up that. And Audrey Hale was a Christian. So why aren't we talking about that? Like, what does her gender have anything to do with this argument?
Well, you said it yourself earlier. It's tribalism. It's othering. It's finding that one criteria that lets you check the box and say, oh, they're not really human.
Yeah. It's and it is an emotional appeal. This person did a bad thing, and it's such a horrible debate tactic, and not to mention it's just plain bigotry, because he will ignore all of the tons of massacres committed by white male Christians. He'll ignore them. What about all of those?
Yeah, that's the same kind of dishonesty. It isn't just priests. We see it from basically every theistic interlocutor I've ever seen. Whether it's Donnie from SFT arguing for young Earth, or Austin Whitsitt arguing for flat Earth, or Helen Joyce, who actually is not a theist, arguing for gender criticalism. It's always cherry pick a specific example to try to poke a hole in the other person's argument, instead of making your own argument as if yours wins by default if you can knock the other side down.
Yeah. What about the Charleston church shooting in 2015, where the guy was a white male Christian white supremacist? What about that one? What's your thing? Oh, but that wasn't a real Christian, right? We exclude that because it doesn't fit our narrative, basically.
Yeah, it's all dishonesty. It's all presupposition, all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
We all feel the grief and the weight of that, including our opponents, atheists and Christians alike. The question is this: which side gets to grieve and complain in a justified and meaningful way? According to the Christian worldview, what happened in Nashville was murder. It was the unjustified taking of human life.
It's according to us, murder as well. Murder's a legal term; it's not a moral term. So, if the student had been attacked and was fearing for their life, that may be completely justified, and that's not what happened. But murder is not a moral term; it's a legal term. It's the illegal taking of life. Like, I think that capital punishment is unjustified. It's totally unjustified.
Legal, but very unethical.
But it's not murder, because it is legal in certain states, where it does happen. In another state, it might be murder. Like, you can't take these legal terms and apply them to morality and things. There's a lot of, it's not just unjustified, it's whether it is legal or not, because the death penalty is unjustified.
Yes, but this has a long tradition here in the United States, possibly elsewhere in the world. But ultimately, like so many things here, it goes back to slavery. One of the big things that happened when we were in the talking phase before the fighting phase about whether slavery should be abolished was, well, it's clearly morally wrong. The defenders of slavery would say, but it's legal and therefore morally correct. And that has embedded itself in American culture. If it's legal, legal equals moral from a certain point of view.
Well, and also that it was justified by a right, a right given by God to have slaves. I mean, I don't think they used that exact words, but they definitely were talking about that it was a God-given right kind of thing.
No doubt. But yeah, I'm willing to grant the dude that, humans all have different opinions about different things. So yeah, there cannot be an objective absolute morality, he says, except for through God, because everything else is incoherent. I'm going to throw God in the incoherent pile too, because, I mean, his God is really incoherent in multiple ways.
Yeah.
But let's grant that. Cool. All morality, no objective, absolute, yada, yada. Cool. We're all on the same page. Morality is out the window. Now what do we do? How do we decide how to behave? Well, maybe we should base it on some principles. Like, I don't know, I don't want to be murdered. How about you? Maybe we should, like...
Empathy. Yeah.
Not murder. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And here we are back with humanist values again.
Well, and not just that. It's like, well, I don't, I wouldn't... Well, actually, that's reciprocity. But empathy is also, I don't like it when other people are suffering. It makes me feel bad. We can just base it upon that. That's empathy. I don't want to live in a world where people are suffering because I don't like it. That's all it requires. Oh, where ultimately does that come from? We've evolved like that. We're a social animal. And I know since they were like talking about evolution, like it's this big evil thing, we are an animal categorically. I don't know how else to say that. You are a member of Kingdom Animalia. I don't know how else to explain that. But we are a social animal. We do need, in order to survive, we do need to cooperatively work together. That is how we've survived. It's built into us.
Explicitly commands against this. You shall not murder, Exodus 20:13. The law of God is transcendent. God is love. Scripture commands love does no harm to its
Yeah, you sound real loving when being a complete and utter bigot to, people for their gender choices. That's nothing. That's all love. Just pure love flowing out of these people.
Yep, God is love. Kill the infidels, but God is love.
Yeah. It's like that abusive boyfriend kind of thing. Oh, well, I only do it because I love you. Oof.
And those adults were made in the Imago Dei. They had purpose, meaning, value, and dignity. They were not cosmic accidents. Furthermore, the police officers who killed the murderous and wicked woman were acting justly in protecting the innocent and preserving human life by taking the life of that truly evil woman. What we get when we look at Nashville through the lens of the devout atheist. What happened in Nashville was merely the scattering of protoplasm. One random result of evolution.
I don't know if it's my signal, but I've lost audio.
You've lost audio? Has everyone lost audio?
I can hear you fine, so I expect it's the video.
Okay. Give me a sec. This is the only way I know how to. All I know is I can fix this by closing all windows. So I got to do that. So my apologies again. Technical issues. I'm sorry. Ugh.
Yeah, please hold. I'm having very bad signal right now, so hopefully you can hear me.
Starting to annoy me. I might open it.
It's one of those nights. We're both going in and out. It's a fun time.
Yeah, I got it. I got it. I got it. I got it. I got it.
On a one summer's evening, on a train bound to no. Hey, there they are.
There they are? Okay.
To grieve and complain in a justified and meaningful way. According to the Christian worldview, what happened in Nashville was murder. It was the unjustified taking of human life. God explicitly commands against this. You shall not murder, Exodus 20:13. The law of God is transcendent.
Right before he commands everyone to murder everyone.
Well, it's sort of the translation is not. I mean, murder, that wasn't murder because it was justified killing, because God commanded it. But this is the unchanging nature of God. So it seems to me that God could just command somebody to murder everybody, even the entire world. And that would be moral in their eyes because God commanded it. So, and they can't say, hey, he wouldn't do that, because do you know the mind of God? Do you know what God would command? He's done it once before. Why couldn't he do it again? Why couldn't he command you to kill everybody in this room? And that would be moral under your worldview. Completely moral. It wouldn't be moral under mine.
Yeah, same thing with slavery. He clearly is a big fan of slavery. So if you're going to claim moral godness, God moralness, then you have to bite the bullet on slavery. Whereas we secular folk can go, nah, fam, that ain't cool. And suddenly we have the moral high ground, bullshit about absolutes, notwithstanding. You cannot claim that God without buying the pig in the poke of slavery. That's the bitch of that God. One of them.
Well, that's the bitch of that book. If you're sort of saying it's inerrant and completely accurate, that's the problem with the book. It has things that we consider to be just absolutely horrendously immoral in it.
Does no harm to its neighbor. Those innocent children and those adults were made in the Imago Dei. They had purpose, meaning, value, and dignity. They were not cosmic accidents. Furthermore, the police officers
those are not mutually
killed
exclusive.
the murderous and wicked woman.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And I don't know about cosmic accidents either. He's kind of using a lot of appeals to emotion to sort of say, well, you wouldn't like it if you're just a cosmic accident. Why? Don't believe that.
That's such a weird thing for a dude who believes in a supernatural entity. I mean, me, if you could convince me I actually was a cosmic accident, holy crap, that's a miracle. It's an actual fucking miracle that I exist. But here he's saying, no, that's not the case. Okay, I'm glad we agree then. There is no supernatural nonsense going on. Yeah. Good to know, I guess.
Mm-hmm. But instead of sort of taking it back to, well, we've got to survive together and we've got to do all these things to flourish together, he's taking it back to, well, the origin of humans was an accident kind. Well, it doesn't matter what the origins is. You know, like, it doesn't matter. We're here now. Like, what do we do about how to survive now? It's kind of just a very, very dodgy way to say, oh, well, you don't know where life came from, so no morals. What are you talking about?
It's a weird conspiracy theory kind of thing, too. Like, accidents do legitimately happen that change the course of fucking history. The discovery of penicillin. Random accident because somebody left a window open. open in a lab. The Civil War. The North eventually would have won anyway, but
Yeah.
Gettysburg happened because somebody left a copy of the Confederate orders lying where a Union scout could find them. And so we knew where the Army of Northern Virginia was going and were able to head it off. And that's what caused the Battle of Gettysburg to happen. If not, it would have taken place outside Baltimore or Washington or something. And so that changed. It was a pure accident, but it changed the shape of the war. These guys are looking at events like that and saying, well, that's just proof of God, because there's no way something that monumental could happen by accident. No, accidents happen, and sometimes the consequences are huge.
Yeah. And so it's more just incredulity that, hey, that can't be an accident because it's too important.
Yeah. It's the same thing, just a different scale.
Yeah.
We're acting justly in protecting the innocent and preserving human life by taking the life of that truly evil woman. But what do we get when we look at Nashville through the lens of the devout atheist? What happened in Nashville was merely the scattering of protoplasm. One random result of evolutionary processes walked into a building and
Yeah, devout atheist. And he'll do a lot of this, sort of say atheist is a religion. And it annoys me every time. And I think that's the purpose of it. Like, they're quite aware there is no atheist religion. There's no worship. There's no tenets. There's nothing of the sort associated with
oh, yeah. It's all rhetoric. It's all trolling.
Yeah.
There's no substance. Yeah. And in a way, they're also telling on themselves there too, because like I've said a million times, like you've said a million times, like Amy Newman points out every chance she gets, and I fucking love her for it. When they use "you believe in a religion" as an insult, they're also admitting that basing your beliefs dogmatically on a religion is stupid, and they know that.
No, I think that a lot of the time what they're trying to do is shift the burden of proof. They're or at least mitigate their own burden. So they will basically say, well, yes, we've got a religion, we believe in it, but you've got a religion too, so you've got to justify your lack of belief in a God, right? You've got
that's what they try to aim for, but they miss.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely, because that is so obviously shifting the burden of proof. Like, it's so obviously saying, hey, I'm making a claim that there's a God. You don't believe me, but I'm going to press you to try and prove me wrong instead of, what should happen, which is you show that you are right. But, it's not like that's not what they're aimed at either. Yeah. Love Amy Newman, though. Amy Newman's amazing.
Caused other cosmic accidents to stop breathing. So what? There's nothing above the Nashville shooter but sky, clouds, and vast emptiness. No justice is ahead of Audrey, and there is no absolute standard of justice to hold her to.
Okay, so this is another appeal to emotion. It's basically saying, doesn't it make you angry that she's dead and nothing will happen to them, kind of thing? Like, sorry, I don't know their gender, actually, but doesn't it make you angry that nothing will happen to them now that they're dead? I don't know what you're expecting. Like, they've had everything that they were or ever will be taken away. I don't. It was a transgender man. I do apologize. So Audrey, I don't know what. Like, and that's no reason to think it's true or false that they're going to be punished in hell. It's just appealing to emotion, saying, well, if they're dead, nothing else will happen to them. Doesn't that make you angry? Therefore, there must be a heaven. That does not follow. It's an emotional appeal again.
You'll forgive me, everyone, for being so callous in this description, but we have to be honest about what atheist presuppositions give us. When human beings are absolutized and put at the center, and what happened in Nashville wasn't absolutely evil. No ultimate ethical law was violated in Nashville. Atheist Richard.
I mean, what do you mean by ultimate ethical law? That's the thing. You think that there is a ultimate sort of moral structure I don't know how you justify that, how you actually show that there is this ultimate law, because all he's done is assert it, and that's the dogmatic assertion. The law was violated, a murder was committed. That's indisputable. I don't, my moral in my moral judgment, if, there was a violation of or something immoral was perpetrated.
Right, but you don't call it ultimate. Therefore, it's not as good because you didn't brand it correctly. It's all marketing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, and it just assertion. If I said, "Hey, and I think Tom Jump did something similar with his Church of the Best Possible World kind of thing. Said, well, there's a non-discovered law of morality that will be discovered by people in the future, kind of thing, but it can't be found at the moment, and it's just a matter of faith that it's there, and it's ultimate. Then it is an ultimate violation. But I'm not dishonest enough to claim to have an ultimate moral law when I can't demonstrate one exists. Because I can't demonstrate one exists, and I don't think that one exists. It's just what we do for ourselves.
Yeah, and conversely, if these jokers could demonstrate one existed, they wouldn't need to play these fucking games. The word games, the rotten sandwich, as Uncle Bobby puts it.
And the appeals to emotion. Don't you want there to be an ultimate morality that means something ultimately? Well, whether there is or not has no relation on what I desire. Yeah, I would like there to be an objective ultimate law that punishes those people that do wrong in life. Sure, that would be great. Is there? Because that's not an argument for why there is. All it's doing is trying to appeal to my emotions of hope. Oh, I wish there was some. It's literally wishful thinking. Oh, I wish there's an ultimate moral law, so there is.
Richard Dawkins explains, quotes, "The universe that we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil, no good."
Yeah. He's not wrong. But he's not talking about humans. He's talking about the universe, the physical universe.
Yeah.
Like, he's not talking about humans have no morals, no good, no evil, no oughts, no shoulds, none of. He's talking about the universe, right? So the physical universe. Like, when you consider the sort of galaxies crashing into one another and the universe expanding and just planets whizzing by and hitting one another, or stars going supernova and wiping out entire planet. Like, there does not seem to be any sort of moral of, oh, that's wrong, well, let's prevent that from happening.
Yeah, and how could there even be? Like, a big freaking rock the size of Mars smacks into proto-Earth. Is that good or evil? Well, probably bad for anything that was on Earth at the time, but on the flip side, the result gave us a big giant moon, which is kind of crucial to life as we experience it now.
Yeah.
So was it good or evil? It's astronomical objects. Who's to say? The terms just don't really apply. It's a malformed question, you might say.
Well, I think when I talk about evil, I talk about intent, right? So natural events like fires and floods and stuff like that and things like that, I don't categorize them as evil because there's no intentionality. There's no mind going, well, I'm going to intentionally inflict that upon somebody.
Unless the Christians are right, then God's behind them.
Well, that's what you can use against them. And that's very important because then you can appeal to natural evils. Evils because then a tornado is evil, right? It damages a whole load of things, but there is intent behind that, and the intent is God's. So either you have to acknowledge that God isn't doing all of the floods and fires and catastrophes and all of these horrible things happening, or you've got to admit that God inflicts evil upon people. Or you've got to say, hey, those things are not evil. That, the horrible Hurricane Katrina is not evil. It's a good thing because it's within the realm of God. So, but I don't have that problem. I can say, hey, evil only applies to intent, and there's no intent behind it, so it's not good or evil. It just is. It's a category error. He can't because he thinks these things are perpetrated by somebody, and that's what trips them up a lot. And that's why the problem of evil exists. Because if there was no control over these things by a god, if this was not preordained by a god for a fire to ravage the country and wipe out tons and tons of stuff, then you could just say, well, if God isn't in control, then it's got nothing to do with God. He doesn't perpetrate evil. But you can't, because everything has to be chosen by God to happen. Except free will, apparently, according to them. But, whatever.
Nothing but pitiless indifference.
Yeah. The universe doesn't care what you think, because it's not an agent, it's not a thing, it's not a being. It just is. That's the way it is. If it isn't, show where the mind of the universe is that cares. Show the God that cares. But no, he's not going to do that. He's just going to assert it's necessary and move on. Cool assertion, bro.
River out of Eden, unquote. The atheists and humanists will try to get around this glaring deficiency in their complaints about Nashville. They'll attempt to have you divert your eyes from the empty bags they're carrying. They'll claim what happened in Nashville caused pain, to which we should say, so what?
Do you like pain?
I mean, there are people who pay good money for certain kinds of pain.
Sure. But I'm wondering if Jeff Durbin would care if somebody inflicted pain upon him. Probably.
He might.
Yeah. Probably. So why should, and that's the whole point. If you care about pain, then you should stop pain from being in the world. I mean, it's not rocket science, buddy. It's pretty simple. And you're like, why? Because we came from bacteria or some crap, like some straw man of evolution. But you still care about pain now. That's the whole point.
Some random results of evolutionary processes like to inflict pain. They enjoy it. It makes them happy.
Yeah, I think when you're talking morality, you're talking about all rational people. So if you've got an irrational enjoyment of inflicting pain, we wouldn't call you rational.
I mean, he seems to be enjoying inflicting pain on the audience, intellectually speaking.
Intellectually speaking, sure. And I mean, there are people out there who have no sense of empathy, psychopaths and more notably sociopaths. They don't care if they inflict pain. Sadists that enjoy inflicting pain, sure. How does your God explain that? Apparently he wrote, everyone's supposed to know about morality, and he's contradicted himself. Everyone's supposed to know about morality and know what they're doing is wrong, but there's people running around with no sense of empathy. How does that work? What's the reason for that?
And you aren't in charge of them. They'll try to avoid the glaring philosophical bankruptcy in their worldview, their ethical worldview, by claiming we've decided as a society that we shouldn't cause harm, to which we remind them of societies run by Stalin, Hitler, Mao, and Pol Pot. They like to inflict harm, and you aren't in charge of them. Furthermore, if our esteemed unbelieving opponents believe that ethical obligations are based upon societal convention or the agreement of the masses, then we must remind them graciously of the time when in this nation, society believed it was ethical to kidnap and enslave our black brothers and sisters. A
Wow.
sin and a crime.
See, all
Rewrite
that,
history
that
much?
slavery in the Bible, that's the atheist's fault, actually.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So Vago, I never said all infliction of pain is irrational. I said some people are irrational with their infliction of pain. Like, for instance, Mother Teresa, who thought that, you know, pain and suffering would make you more holy. That's irrational. There's no rational reason why that is the case. So I never said that all like desire to inflict pain is irrational. I never said that.
Crime by the way that God commanded capital punishment for. I want us all to remember that what happens in a godless universe just happens. It just is. When we absolutize human beings in their posture.
No. You're not asking me anything. I'm like, one of my rules is you don't debate in the chat. So like, if you want to debate, just email me. I'm moving on.
Godless world, what one human being does to another is ultimately morally irrelevant and illusion. Michael Ruse was right. In his essay called Evolution and Ethics in New Scientist, he said, in an important sense, ethics as we understand it is an illusion fobbed off on by our genes to get us to cooperate. Ethical codes work because they drive us to go against our selfish day-to-day impulses in favor of long-term group survival and harmony. Furthermore, the way our biology forces our ends is by making us think that there is an objective higher code to which we're all subject.
Yeah. I don't see the problem with that. I just don't see the problem with that.
Ethics is a shared illusion of the human race. So my friends, watch. We humbly ask you to watch. Watch as our friends write checks with their mouths that their worldviews can't cash.
He's such an ass. He's just poisoning the well. Oh, their bags are empty. They don't have anything to say. You know, it's just posturing. It's just pure posturing. And
it absolutely nothing. And even his very ending there, it's an illusion. My guy, we're all very open about the fact that we collectively agree on things. If you're negotiating a contract in the open with all parties present and fully informed that this is a negotiation, how, in what universe is that an illusion that you're trying to trick someone with?
Right. And we know that that is purely subjective. That contract, there's nothing in the universe that's going to enforce that contract. It's not going to, you know, it doesn't get written into some objective secret stone that cannot be altered. And, you know, it's just something we made up. It just is. Wow.
I'm scared to speak here because according to Pastor Durbin, I'm a dangerous man, you know. So hopefully you'll find that that's not true. In fact, I'm honored and humbled to be here in the same podium with Director Dr. James White and our pastor, Jeff Durbin. And I thank my old friend, Pastor Jason Wallace of Christ Presbyterian Church of Magna, and of course, Rachel Christie for doing this event here. It's a great thing to do.
This guy talks so slowly. It's actually incredible. He's probably one of the worst public speakers I've seen in quite some time. And it's really unfortunate.
I believe that that's exactly how we enrich ourselves. So we're not here to fight. We're here to exchange ideas. Just want to let you know that. Now, time is very short for an opening statement. So many of the ideas that I'm going to give you, they are in a very constrained and summary format. I cannot explain them too much because there's so many internal intricacies and all that. Hopefully, down the road in the subsequent time that we have, we'll get a chance to explain some of them a bit more. But I would like to give you an overview, even though in a summary format, to get to show you where we are coming from, okay? Hopefully that will be helpful. The question of this debate is God necessary for ethics? The answer to that is a resounding no. And let me explain why. Firstly, when we make God the basis of ethics, and in this case we have found out it's already a Christian God, that is what they're talking about. The question, of course, first is there are at least 50 major religious sects.
This guy's terrible. Can you imagine this guy's a lecturer? It is blindingly bad. It really is. He is not like, I'm going to turn up the speed of this man because he is. Oh, I didn't turn up the speed of him to begin with. Okay, that's probably why he seems so slow.
Yeah, that's fair.
100 or so.
When I rebooted it, I probably didn't turn up speed.
Not so major religious sects, and maybe 200 or 300 minor sects and then small religious forces, movements, all that. They all have their God. They all have their gods. Okay, so the question is then, which God are you going to go for? We did not find anything here to justify their idea of God other than they're coming up with their own God. The question naturally is, of all these 300 or more so God, maybe there would be more, gods and goddesses, which one should we go for? Which one should we talk? Now, if we say, no, it has to be our God is moral, we have to justify that with reason. Instead, if we try to do it by force, that no, it has to be our God, my way or highway, then that is the end of morality. That's where we breed violence, intolerance, and that's not morality. So the moment we try to show that there is one particular God, as they're saying, that is to be preferred of all these other 300 gods or so, we need to find out why. We did not find any such reason here because there are so many gods. We don't know.
So what he's talking about is the argument from a moral diversity, that there are so many moral systems, there are so many different ideas of morality that it sort of, we can't seem to find like if you consider other scientific laws that are objective, so the law of gravity, right? Everybody agrees on it. Everybody knows that that's how it works. We can sort of know these objective facts about the universe. But when you're talking about morality, almost every Christian has a different idea of morality. But certainly every denomination does. There are themes that run through all of them, but morality does not seem to be something that we can analyze and get an answer to like we can these other objective principles. So it does seem to suggest that there is no underlying moral truths in the universe. So they aren't set in stone into the universe. That really what we're doing is attempting to implement something to allow us to flourish on this world. And that's constrained by the nature of humans and the nature of the environment. It's not sort of this thing that we can just analyze. And the moral diversity shows that itself, especially when Christians claim it's written on your heart. Then why does everybody disagree? Why does everybody disagree? And then they'll just respond by saying, oh, yeah, but we're right. Yeah, that's what everybody else says. Can you show you're right?
Oh, what they stand for. Okay. Then that's one big problem. Just it shows that we have to have something else besides to start with God. And that's reason, rational discourse, mutual understanding. Okay. The next question I would like to ask is, does such a God exist, whatever God we choose? And that's a very important question because now in this case, we have already chosen a Christian God. We know that it cannot be rationally proved, meaningfully proved that a Christian God exists. Throughout the tradition, the Christian theologians, I can name all of them and their books and their ideas, no time for that. They have tried to give arguments to show that such gods exist because they don't want to show that their faith is a blind faith, it's a dogma, so they want to give reason to be respectable, to be acceptable. All those reasons fail. There are 5 main reasons for God's existence. They all have fatal flaws. They don't prove that God exists. So therefore, that's yet another problem. So we have to bring in something other than God. Now, then of course comes the veracity of scriptures. We have seen that they have quoted from the Bible quite a lot. Okay, how can we be so sure that if the Bible, if the scripture contains God's words, well, how do we know that? The Bible, for example, was collected, put together nearly 2,000 years ago, during a very primitive time by primitive folks. And Jesus, in fact, when he died after that, it was not for at least 40 years the synoptic gospels were put together. During those 40 years, do you know how many ideas floated around? How do you know for sure those primitive folks kept Jesus' ideas exactly the way he spelled out? And
yeah, that's kind of what I was saying, that even if you do have some sort of objective morality that underlines everything, you're still relying on subjective interpretation from the authors, subjective interpretation from the translators, subjective interpretation by your own reading of the text and interpreting what that means. So, you know, the idea that they have access to some objective morality is not true. And you're right, Ray, he talks terribly. He doesn't, you know, I think it's just, maybe it's a cultural barrier, but he just sort of talks in these sentences that never end, and he doesn't emphasize anything. I think paying attention to tone and inflection would probably do this guy a lot of good. It's absolutely terrible way that he's talking at the moment in this sort of just this monotone thing. You should really emphasize things that you want to push down, and your tone should be light and sort of putting in pauses here and there for people to consider what you've said.
Dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's a lot more to communication in English than just saying words. There's all kinds of stuff happening. So yeah, I mean, I could talk a lot about tone and inflection, but
yeah, I've had professors like this fellow who just talk in a monotone with a regular pace because they're used to students taking notes, writing down everything they say. Oof. But this fellow also seems to have a language barrier problem on top of being trained as an educator, but not so much a communicator.
Right.
And
I think we've all had a lecturer like this. Like, it's just like, oof, dude, you know, I watch the online lectures that I can fast forward. Oof.
In the Bible, we don't know that. So therefore, this sort of blind faith in the scripture, that's not a very good idea either. So you have to bring in something else rather than blind faith and dogma. Okay. So what are some of the fundamental ethical presuppositions? The ones I'm going to put here, everybody should agree, regardless of what religion or outside of any religion they stand. There happen to be, these fundamental ethical presuppositions happen to be autonomy of the individual, what we call agency. An individual cannot be a robot. To be a moral agent, that person has to have autonomy, okay? Everybody should agree with that. Then
so he's saying that in order to have morality, you've got to be able to make decisions, kind of thing. So autonomy is necessary. I kind of agree with that. Yeah, I mean, but I don't think that morality, like, in order to be moral, if your version of morality is a totalitarian system, if that's what you're advocating for, then I mean, you don't want autonomy. It's not something that you have to do. I don't know. It's very weird the way that he's sort of phrased this, that without autonomy you have no morality. Without, hey, some people can be autonomous and not allow others their autonomy. It happens all the time. We don't allow prisoners autonomy, right, that have committed crimes.
Right.
But I still think that's the moral thing to do. So I'm not sure about that one, to be honest with you. I think he's trying to get at... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what he's driving at, is that you can only be said to have morality with respect to the areas where you do have autonomy. Like you said, prisoners typically don't have much autonomy, but they do have some. And if they take their toothbrush and make a shiv and then stab another inmate with it, that's generally considered immoral, even though they have limited autonomy, because that's still within their power. They chose
that's true.
poorly.
Yeah. Well, I'd be considering this. Like, I mean, we only apply morality to thinking beings, but we could apply it to something like my computer. And my computer doesn't have autonomy. It just does what it does, kind of thing. So even if autonomy and free will is an illusion, you can still apply moral statements. In fact, moral statements can be applied more heavily, because if we're not doing the way that humans have evolved to behave in a social manner, you could say that they're not doing what they ought to do, and then that can become a moral statement. Just like I could apply a moral statement to my computer of, hey, it's doing what it ought to do, or not doing what it ought to do. So I don't think that sort of saying, well, we don't have autonomy or free will is an actual argument against morality. I think that you can still make moral statements against things that don't have free will.
You can, but I don't know. I feel like it starts to run into incoherency.
Yeah, no, I get you. I guess you can't hold things responsible for doing immoral things, and I suppose.
Damn you, computer! You should have used protection. Now you got a virus.
Yeah, exactly.
And reciprocity, which we often call the golden rule, it's there in all religions. In fact, it has been there in human history in all religions way before Christianity came into being. In Buddhism and all other religions, in some form or other, the golden rules, the idea of reciprocity, respecting the other person as you would like to be respected yourself, okay? And then the question of responsibility. Can you think of morality without responsibility? So these are the fundamental presuppositions of morality. And these concepts are universal in the sense that in some form or other, different religions, different cultures, different folks, God believers or not, they all agree to some version of that. It's there all along. This is an empirical observation. You don't have to take my word for it. But just because they're universal, they're not vacuous. Often universal statements are empty. They're vacuous. They're not vacuous. They're contextual. But often, which are contextual, they could be relativistic. And morality cannot be relativistic. They're contextual at the same time. They're universal. They're not vacuous. It's a nice balance and tension in that. And that's the beauty of these moral concepts, that they are universally applicable in ways that people find suitable to them, but there are some basic core there, okay? Now, these concepts are related to the concepts of right and wrong, and these are central moral concepts, and these are secular concepts, right or wrong. Whereas, if we bring in the religious idea of morality, that morality is based on God, then we get into this idea of sin and righteousness. These are religious concepts, and they're meaningful only to a bunch of believers.
So sin isn't meaningful to me. It doesn't mean anything. I when I hear sin, I just go, well, you mean immoral in some way? It doesn't. There's nothing. Sinful doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah, I mean, it means anything because it's not defined, really.
Right. It's kind of what God tells you is wrong. Well, God doesn't tell me anything. So, it doesn't make any sense to me why I would, things are definitely immoral by my estimation, but I don't like this whole idea of sin that I've got to atone for kind of thing to a God. No, there's things that I have to atone for to the people I've wronged, but that's not to a God. I don't, sin makes no sense to me. An original sin makes less sense to me. That because your great grandfather ate a fruit, then you deserve all of these things to happen. Like it's why?
Yeah,
what?
That's one of the things that I know we've talked about this before, but every video is somebody's first video. That's one of the things that makes the presuppositional argument so very incoherent to me. Because if morality has to come from God, but knowledge of good and evil was prohibited to humans by God. That was his first and only command, is do not take that knowledge of good and evil. Then how can anyone make the case that humans have knowledge of good and evil, have the ability to make moral decisions because of God, when he did literally everything in his power to keep us from having that capability, according to the story?
And what's even more hilarious is that in Ezekiel, it says the son shall not bear the iniquity of the father, kind of thing, that you shouldn't pass sins down. But that's what the entire religion is based upon, is like the original sin. So, I suppose when it's you know, it makes no sense to me.
Not otherwise, not to the outsiders, but morality cannot be segmented into these different groups, because then it gets hopelessly relativistic. And so I'll get to that point just in a minute. So the whole idea is that
he's a terrible speaker. I'm really sorry. He's just terrible. Absolutely terrible. I don't know if they chose, like, they're punching down or whatever, but he's not very convincing.
ethics is essentially a human enterprise based on these concepts that I told you about, and the difficulty of bringing in God that I mentioned a bit earlier. It's essentially a human enterprise. In fact, if I can quote one line from Jared's statement he's going to come up with after I finish, he says, the root of ethics is caring and cooperation. And caring and cooperation are a feature of life. He's so right,
Yeah, so basically we're talking about empathy and reciprocity. Empathy is the caring and reciprocity is the cooperation, that I do something for you, you do something for me. It's not transactional, but it's more just I treat you in a way that I would like to be treated within the society, because that's the foundation of society. I think that the people do point to these fundamental evolutionary traits as being grounds for objective morality. I don't think that rises to, like, just because we have these feelings, it doesn't rise to the level of a moral code. It doesn't tell you who you should treat like this or who you should consider in your group. But I think it is the basis for it, it is the foundation for it, that in order to survive and flourish as humans, we have had to develop, or it is naturally developed, that we have empathy and we have reciprocity. And I think they're fundamental emotions, just like no one has to teach you to be happy, right? Like you don't have to be taught that. You don't have to be taught that, with one baby seeing another baby injured, sometimes they will cry. They will actually feel for that baby. Like it happens. That sense of empathy is there from birth. So I think it is a biological function of humans, just like happiness is, just like sex drive is, just like any of these instinctual impulses. But I don't think that rises to the level of morality, right? Because just because you feel for somebody being in that position doesn't tell you what to do about it. You may feel for somebody whose leg is hurt, but it doesn't tell you, well, you should amputate that leg. We need more for that. So that's why I don't think it is morality per se. But I think it is sort of a proto-morality, or the beginnings of morality. It gives us sort of tools to understand how to develop these moral systems. It's just like fear isn't a survival strategy, right? Like it's not a survival strategy in and of itself, but it does allow us to form survival strategies. Does that make sense? Yeah. I feel like I'm just, the fear itself is not a survival strategy, but survival strategies can be based upon fear. Just like empathy, reciprocity are not moral strategies in themselves, but moral strategies can be based upon these these tools that we have.
Morality is from human to human. We don't need to go up there and come down via that extra outside route, in a way that is not needed. It's directly from one human to the other, and human groups to other human groups and amongst themselves. That's where morality is, right here, not that way. That is cumbersome, okay? And of course, based on what up there, we don't know. I told you about the problems if we try to go from there. Now, so when it comes to sin and righteousness, these concepts, the religious concepts, they're only meaningful to believers of that religion, but they generate guilt and shame and fear. Now, these are not moral concepts, and they are very unhealthy, no question, but they are very useful in putting people into place. They're good.
Yeah, so this is something exceptional that he said, and it's undercut by his lack of emphasis on it. That sin generates shame and guilt, right? And they're not useful in morality, but they are useful for putting people in their place, making people do things. And he's got a very good point. They're not beneficial for humans. They're not. There are beneficial ways to address that, but religion uses these things, and it's really good.
They're good for controlling, and they're good for manipulation, these ideas. And these are not moral way to do it, okay? So the point is that to believe in a God without any reason, it's a dogma. And a dogma which is not based on reason and open-mindedness, human experience, meaning a meaningful dogma, that dogma is top-down, not bottom-up, like morality should be, based on human experience, human life. And when that happens, that dogma is not good to base ethics on, okay? Ethics cannot be based on dogma. So this idea of my way or highway, that generates tension, conflict, and violence. And history is replete with how Christianity has led to violence all around. In fact, when it comes to violence, Christianity stands number one in the whole world history, followed a distant second is, of course, Islam. Anyway, I will get later on into some of the other traditions to show that there are really even religious traditions which are profoundly moral without a belief in God. Anyway, that will come later in our segment later. Okay, so I would like to just simply put myself down here now with this idea that dogma should not be the basis of ethics, so we need to have reason. Now, the thing is that God is a dogma the way it's put, unless we bring in reason. But the point is this: the dogma can be reasonable. The dogma is never rational, keep that in mind. But it can,
yeah, I'd agree with that. Dogma is never rational, but it can be reasonable. Sure. Yeah.
Can be reasonable if it's put to good use. If we can use it good ways to bring people close to morality, to make them more compassionate, kind, caring, sharing, and all those, To that extent, the dogma can be reasonable, meaning it's helpful, but it can never be rational. So God could be helpful when it comes to morality, but it can never be the basis of morality. Please keep that.
Yeah, so he's basically saying religion can make people work together. It can be something that helps people do all of these things. It can be useful for getting people to cooperate together. It can be useful for getting society to work towards a certain aim, but that doesn't mean it's rational.
Please keep that in mind. There's a big distinction between the two. Something that's helpful is always welcome, but let's not make it a dogma and make morality based on that, okay? Quite a few ideas. Some of them will be unpacked later. I'd like to leave it at that right now.
I don't know whether it's appropriate or inappropriate as the closing member of the opening statements to observe.
Okay, he was an awful talker. Like
that was
terrible.
Bad. I had trouble following much of it.
Yeah, I really had to focus in order to really get something out of that. But he did have a couple of good points in there. A couple of ones I disagree with, but a couple of good points. And a lot of it was lost just in the monotone delivery and not having a well-ordered kind of thing. He sounded like he was reciting a lecture from philosophy of religion or something. It just doesn't. Yeah.
That this is an impossible debate. You should feel impressed that we are trying to pull it off. Are you not entertained? Name the movie. You can believe that God is necessary for ethics. You can presuppose that God is necessary for ethics. We may have seen some of that tonight. But I believe it is functionally impossible to debate that God is necessary for ethics. Yes, we can reduce our definition of God so much that it becomes tautological and God becomes necessary for ethics. Okay, if God is whatever brought us into existence and existence is necessary for existence, then yes, in some minimal way, God is necessary for ethics.
Yeah, but that's a well, you're really playing with definitions at that point, because whatever brought us into existence is not necessarily the Christian God or any what I would call a God at that point. It isn't even necessarily something with agency. But if that's what you're defining as God, if God is just whatever brought us into existence, and things that are either necessary or contingent, right? And we're contingent on whatever brought us into existence. Then for morality to exist, humans have to exist. For humans to exist, the God that brought us into existence is necessary. Then yes, he's correct. But your definitions are so loose at that point, you're not making any sensible statement about what brought us into existence. You're just using the label God for that, even if it's just a series of natural processes. There's no agency in that even. So, yeah.
God is demonstrably real. You were not expecting that, were you? In that God is an idea that people, most people, actually believe in, making God an intersubjective reality. Intersubjective should be the $20 word that you walk away with. You could also assert that humans are functionally God, a position that I support, but these minimal definitions of God cancel themselves out. If ethics are a human phenomenon, or more precisely, an extrapolation of social behavior of living creatures, then God is not necessary for ethics. The question of whether God is necessary for existence would be an interesting debate. The question of which conception of God is most ethical would be another interesting debate. The question of whether belief in God is helpful for morality would be yet another interesting debate. That's a debate I would probably be on the affirmative for, but that's not the debate we are having in this moment. I'm using morality to describe the system of belief relating to what is right and wrong, and ethics as the analysis of that system, either to establish or study it. Ethics is the art and science of studying morality. We could also have robust debates about the ways that the idea of God and belief in God is problematic for ethics, which perhaps we'll get into a bit later. It is worth mentioning that God could exist and still not be necessary for ethics.
Good point.
Mm-hmm.
That could be entirely true. Like, that's what the deists believe. You know, I think that the deists would say, hey, God created the universe, spun it into motion. It just does what it does, and there is no ethics or morality deriving from God. It just plays out exactly as it looks like.
Thousands of years ago, Plato asked, which is bigger, God or good? Is the pious loved by the gods because it is pious, or is it pious because it is loved by the gods? That's known as Euthyphro's dilemma. Even if you fervently believe in God, even if God does exist, God is not.
Okay, so I want to explain that a little more. So the Euthyphro dilemma, what it basically says is what is right and wrong derived from what God says or from somewhere else, right? Is it either derived from what God dictates or not from what dictates? And that is a true dichotomy. Does it come from somewhere else, basically? So either what God dictates or not what God dictates. So the reason why it's such an incredible dilemma, or a dichotomy, a true dichotomy that has problems on both sides, is because if it is what God says, then God could just say, hey, it's perfectly acceptable to murder everybody tomorrow. Just have at it. That is completely moral. In fact, you should do that. You ought to do that. And that would be moral. And a lot of Christians throughout the years have thought God had dictated and told them that and gone and done it. So that becomes moral for some reason, because God just dictates it. On the other hand, if it comes from somewhere else, where is that? If it's not what God dictates, then where does it actually come from? A lot of theists try to avoid this by saying, hey, it's God's nature. It's in God's nature is good. Well, then we've got to look at the actions of God and what he's done. Like, he's genocided the entire world. He's killed off people. He's done all of this. And if you want to say, oh, well, that's for God and not humans, then you're not getting your morals from God's nature. Because if you are getting your morals from God's nature, then you would be acting like God.
I also like to take the practical approach myself. Like, all of that aside, even concede everything they want, whatever, what's the mechanism for conveying this godly morality onto humans? Oh, it's written on our hearts, you say. Well, how? Where? What? By what means? Is a finger coming down in the labor and delivery room and inscribing, like, how does it get there? Can you show me? If you can't show me, why do we think so?
God is not necessary for ethics. Only you need to exist for ethics to exist. We in this moment are enough. We being here having this debate means that God is not necessary for ethics. Here's how it works. You hurt them. Now say you're sorry. Hopefully all of us have had an experience like this. Perhaps the person we hurt was a brother or sister or friend, but all of us have had the experience of being told that we hurt someone else, being told that our actions matter, that our actions impact others. Most of us have stories of childish cruelty that we need to grow out of. Anyone else burn ants with a magnifying glass? I'm sorry about that. Other actions are wrong because they weaken our character and are out of alignment with our goals, like cheating. Being ethical means being a good member of society, being a good member of the groups we are a part of. Being a good person means that we act in alignment with the best interest of the well-being of others. What it means to be a good person is a conversation we all have. It is a conversation we inherit. It is a conversation we have throughout our lives. If you want to confirm that ethics are innate, just cut cake at a 6-year-old's birthday party. God is not necessary for ethics because ethics are a part of life. Ethics emerge from us sharing life together. It is the task of a lifetime to understand that other people.
Yeah, and so he's sort of talking about John Rawls and sort of, so basically you're sort of saying, in order to be the most fair, when you cut the cake, you should choose the slice last, right? That you should allow everyone to choose a slice. That will motivate people to cut the cake in a way that is fair, basically. So we have these systems of fairness.
All sorts of interesting things happening on the interwebs today.
Yeah. Apparently praise has been deleted. It hasn't. It's still there.
Yeah, I'm looking at the channel too. It's still got 9.5K subs. It's still got the videos are private, but they're there. There's interesting.
And it's the same one because it was joined like back in 2011 kind of thing, and it definitely is the same channel. So I think you might be slightly incorrect there. It's it definitely is there.
I wonder if it's a hack kind of situation like Jimmy Snow had last year, where like Jimmy's channel got taken over, all the videos got privated, and it started putting out like buy Elon Musk coins or some crap like that. I don't know. I mean, I don't see that either, but maybe that's the idea. Wild speculation.
I don't think so. It is the same username, so it's the same channel. But it also could be maybe someone did something. I don't know. I wouldn't believe what you're saying, because it does seem like the same channel. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I think that I wouldn't trust you, Dr. Spider. You haven't been known to tell all of the truth all of the time, so I sort of am hesitant in believing you.
That other people matter just as much as we do. Far too many of us never get to that point. Even though even toddlers can begin to understand that different people have different preferences. There was a great experiment involving broccoli and goldfish. The toddlers could not understand why adults want broccoli. Ethics can be distilled to a single equation. Every action should be defensible.
I don't know about that one. Broccoli and goldfish. Maybe you should have extrapolated on that.
Yeah.
I think he's assuming that everyone knew what he was talking about, and I don't have a idea.
Yeah, I had so my kids went through weird phases with broccoli. It was mostly my oldest. My son, the middle child, anything green he would eat. So we never had a broccoli problem. And my youngest pretty much did what my oldest did. So it came down to the oldest. As long as they did not know what they were eating was broccoli, they thought it was little trees, it was fine. If you told them that was broccoli, now it's gross. But they went back and forth. Like, there were times when they'd get over that and be like, well, it's part of Chinese food, and Chinese food is good, therefore broccoli is good. But then they'd forget that rationalization and be, oh, broccoli is awful again. And so it went back and forth until they were like 14 and started being rational and were like, this is stupid. It's a vegetable. Who cares?
Okay, so this is a experiment done by Gopnik, who basically they had experimenters take sort of tasted food from each bowl, from raw broccoli and animal crackers, apparently in the shape of goldfish kind of thing. And they gave 14 and 18-month-old babies raw bowls of raw broccoli and Pepperidge Farm goldfish crackers. The babies tasted the food and made faces or gestures indicating whether they liked or did not like the vegetable crackers. So the interesting part is when they held out their hand for the food, the baby would give the researchers the food that they liked rather than the food that the child liked. Right? So, so the 18-month babies would give the food that the experimenter liked rather than the food that the babies liked. So that idea of empathy or reciprocity, it kind of is inherent even in very, very young infants. It was done by Alison Gopnik, developmental psychologist, PhD actually, Dr. Alison Gopnik, which is cool.
Sweet.
Yeah, so we're sort of saying, hey, that idea that you do something for somebody else. So even if the researcher took the raw broccoli and made a that's really good face, the child would understand that that's what they want. Even if the child found the crackers to be way nicer, which they obviously would, they would give them the broccoli. And I think that's what he's alluding to. They couldn't understand why the adult wanted the broccoli, but they understood that the adult wanted the broccoli. Right, but explaining that would have been way better, because I didn't have a clue what he was talking about until I looked it up right now. Right?
Should be defensible to the ideal version of all those impacted by that action. Every action should be defensible to the ideal version of all of those impacted by that action. We should avoid hurting others because they matter the way we matter. If we have to hurt them, we should be able to explain and defend why we are hurting them, like there's a wasp on their head, or they're paying us to hurt them because we're their personal trainer. Ethics exist because you exist. If you don't exist, please do come talk to me after. Humans exist. We exist. We are talking about...
That's actually a really good joke. And I did like the thing like there should be a reason why you hurt people, like you're paying them to be your personal trainer. I just found that hilarious because, it's just funny. It's just funny. He's obviously had a couple of gym sessions that really hurt, mate. Like, I get where you're coming from, like, seriously.
Talking about ethics. Again, ethics are a cultural conversation. We inherit social norms. We grow up with family traditions, some healthier than others. We navigate preferences and needs of our loved ones. All of these decisions and requests and conversations involve ethics. In the entertaining book, How to Be Perfect, Michael Schur, the author of the excellent show, The Good Place, reviews major ethical theories. I'm a fan of Aristotle.
Have you ever seen The Good Place?
Not yet. A few people have told me I have to watch it, but I have a hard time watching things because I never have time. I don't even know what service it's on.
I don't know. I could probably look it up, but it is really good for morality and our ideas of just philosophy in general kind of thing. And it's very funny and a cool show, basically. This guy should have sold it. Absolutely. No, I got you. He's really good. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to show Jared Anderson, because he's actually very, very good. And he's just talking about sort of how we treat each other as being the foundation for morality, how we feel towards one another. And this intersubjectivity means that it's not, because so an argument that's often presented is basically it will give me 1 second, sorry. 10 minutes, go. Goodbye.
What now?
It's okay. Okay. So it's interesting that one of the arguments that levied against sort of people that say, hey, morality is a social construct is basically they'll say, oh, so it's just your preference. But no, it's intersubjective. So even if my preference is that murder is okay, it's still not okay across a society. Like nothing that my preference is will change that. So it's not just my preference whether it's moral or not. It is due to the society. Like whatever I think isn't going to make it moral. If I go, well, you know, being a horrible bigot is now, you know, I'm going to believe that that's moral. It doesn't make it moral across society or a group or you know, I've got no control over that. So that's what he's saying by intersubjectivity, but it kind of went over their heads.
Yeah.
Aristotle's virtue ethics, which
it
describes
it's a mistake a lot of debaters make, where they just say something and assume everyone knows. Sometimes you do actually have to unpack an idea and explain why it matters.
Yes. And I mean, I've made that mistake before. I totally get it. It's sort of when you're in a realm of, you know, talking to other atheists and other people, you might gloss over something that in order for the religious people to understand you, you've got to extrapolate a bit. And so even if it does sound like you're treading old ground a lot, sometimes it is necessary. And I think that sort of, I mean, they're not appealing enough to the audience and talking in their terms, where the other side, that's all they've got. You know, all they've got is dog whistles and appeals to emotion and just these rhetoric, basically. That's all they've got.
Balance of ideals that we should all strive for. I believe that all of our traits can be expressed in a healthy, virtuous way. Utilitarianism seeks the greatest good for the greatest number of people, which I feel is best balanced by focusing on well-being rather than pleasure. Deontology seems like a dodge to me, a fancy way of saying do the right thing without necessarily explaining how to define right, but functionally the right thing is yet another intersubjective reality established through intergenerational cultural conversation. Lots of very smart people have explored interpersonal ethics, which I am describing in my arguments. Emmanuel Levinas emphasized our basic duty to the other. Similarly, T.M. Scanlon's book, What Do We Owe to Each Other, emphasizes interpersonal morality.
And that's a book that they quote in The Good Place a lot. What we owe to each other. Like, what is our moral obligations to each other? Well, if you don't want to be part of a society, if you want to be struggling to survive without society, then nothing. But if you want to be part of a society, you have to form part of that social contract. You have to. So what we owe to each other. And it's a really interesting book.
Morality, which requires that we be able to justify our conduct to others. John Rawls' vow of ignorance uses our self-interest to pivot towards what others want and need. Carol Gilligan's Ethics of Care also focuses on interpersonal relationships and our duty to care for others. Seems obvious when we talk about it, but applying these principles in our lives requires mastery and more self-awareness than most people prefer. When I was a believing Latter-day Saint at UNC Chapel Hill, I expressed my faith, bore my testimony to my then PhD advisor, Bar Ehrman, thusly: one of two things is true. Either God exists and God communicates to us through our physiology, psychology, and sociology, in other words, our brains, bodies, and groups, or God exists and communicates to us and we are created, evolved in such a way that we believe in God. Whether or not you believe we are created or evolved, our bodies and brains are, sorry.
Doesn't say.
It's an interesting thought perspective. He's posing it as something his past self, who was a believer at the time, was saying. So I can't really call him out on a false dichotomy, because he's not saying that's what he thinks now. That's what he was saying then. But at the same time, like, it's an interesting thing to consider. Like, why do humans believe in gods? Well, the quick, simple answer is evolution made that advantageous. Evolution created the possibility for the illusion of divine beings. I don't agree, but I can't be certain that I'm unbiased about why, you know?
Right.
Sorry, I will wrap up. As a chaplain, I affirm faith and spirituality, and I work with people in the most difficult moments of their lives.
Yeah, so this is interesting because he's a chaplain in the military. So he actually has a military background, which is interesting. But I think he's more a humanist chaplain now, like a non-denominational kind of thing, which is interesting. And you know, I think that when people talk about spiritual, I don't think he's talking about supernatural stuff. Some people talk about spiritual sort of in the realms of psychology kind of thing, like our spiritual needs, as in sort of thing. I don't have spiritual needs. Not that I would define it as spiritual. Some people do. I certainly have psychological needs, things that are not physical. So if that's what you mean by spiritual, then so be it. I have spiritual needs. If you're defining spiritual as supernatural, I certainly don't.
Most of them, having been a chaplain in the Navy myself, it's taken in a more pragmatic sort of way. Like, it's not, there isn't a philosophical underpinning where people argue about the definition of what spiritual is. They just say everyone has spiritual needs, regardless of what they specifically believe. And it's an interesting thing, in that these evangelical types who believe in the truth of their word and whatnot, and they're over here just telling everybody else that they're wrong. And then here's a guy who is secular by nature, who's just trying to help people. And that's an interesting thing, because he is a former LDS person. He is a former believer. And, you know, even the people who start out as charismatics or evangelicals or whatever, when you're in a real world situation like the military, like not where you're running your own church and telling everybody who's a different denomination to get lost, where your duty is to help people regardless of where they're coming from, you very quickly develop a utilitarian perspective on these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
You say it doesn't matter who you pray to. Prayer brings you comfort, so let's pray together, you know?
Yep.
Their lives. I support people as they die. Support people from any religious background or none at all. I am able to do this because I connect at the level of human needs and experience. Questions of meaning and the reality of connection and support are also human. God is not necessary for grief or support or resolution. We humans supporting each other does the work traditionally attributed to gods and angels. God is not here in this auditorium, as best as we can tell. Many here may believe that God has an influence in this auditorium, but I hope that we can all agree that we are more certain that we are here than that we are certain that God is here. The presence of God is up for debate, literally.
I love that phrase. We can be more certain that we're here than a God is here. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's well played.
Well, it brings me back around to the idea that they're saying, oh, well, and here's the thing about precept. They're kind of shifting they are just shifting the burden of proof. They're like, well, you believe in a non-God world, so you've got to prove that non-God world. The whole point is, well, we both agree that we exist and the physical world exists, right? That's not under contention. I'm not proposing anything beyond what you still believe. right? I'm not proposing there's a different world than what you believe. You still believe in a non-God world and a God world on top. You're the one claiming there's a God world. Demonstrate it. Because we both agree. The things that I would say that I can prove, like, oh, that we're here, that there's physical things, that there's, a car outside, that there's the world, the planet kind of thing, they don't disagree on. All of those things we both agree on. So me proving the non-God world is just pointing out the world. You're saying that it's a God world. You've got to prove it. Yeah. So this is what to do if they try to shift the burden of proof. You're basically like, well, the world that I see, we both agree on.
Literally. But again, we can all be certain that we are here. We are here talking about ethics. Therefore, God is not necessary for ethics. Thank you.
We just heard it said that only you need to exist to do ethics. So when the North Korean prison guard comes up to you and blows your head off with an AK-47.
Appeal to emotion, anybody?
Do your ethics vanish? And are his ethics therefore established as proper ethics because he continues to exist? But
what do you mean by proper ethics? What do you mean by that?
As opposed to informal ethics?
I don't know what he means by that. It's just this whole dodge of, well, if it's not objective, it's not real ethics. And it's like, what are you talking about? I don't know what he's talking about.
Exists, but only for a certain period of time. You see, once you reduce this subject to, well, this is just us talking amongst ourselves. You have to deal with the reality that right now in North Korea, in China, unspeakably evil things are taking place. And they're taking place with the government saying this is the proper ethical and moral thing to do.
I'll go you one further. In churches, there are unspeakably evil things taking place. Evil bigotry and injustices taking place. And you say it's in the name of God. How does that work?
Well, God is like big and in charge or something.
So might makes right is the way to go. Yeah, I gotcha.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're just making shit up, that's a good one.
Yeah.
To do. And in our own country, right now, in this state, in small little buildings in our neighborhoods, innocent little children are being torn apart in their mother's wombs. And this
appeal to emotion. He's just stoking the dog whistles and appeals to emotion and sort of, yeah, that's all he's doing. It's not a coherent argument. It's just, oh, abortion bad. That's his argument. Wow.
Yeah.
And this,
so when we're talking morality and what we ought to do kind of thing, it doesn't mean that, oh, wait, we've already done this one?
Well, yeah.
Really? I don't remember this at all. Was it on your channel or mine?
Yours. It was debate dissection number 2. That's why I put it in the private chat, because I didn't,
Well, I don't care. If I've made a mistake, I'm perfectly happy to own up to it. No, totally my mistake. I did not see that. That was obviously a while ago.
Oh yeah, about a year.
Wow. All right. My memory is terrible. This is why you shouldn't trust me with anything. But I'm going to proceed onwards because I'm actually enjoying myself. So tough.
This society right now, just in this past week, has demonstrated that when it is said that we inherit social norms, really, I can guarantee you one thing. The way that this nation has responded to what happened in Nashville is not how this nation would have responded to the same events when I was a young person, say, in 1975. Not even close. So what has changed?
Really?
We need to be thinking about this because, to be honest with you,
I mean, for one thing, these sort of events didn't happen in 1975. Like there were the occasional
Yeah.
incident of some kind or another, but
Mhm.
this regular daily shooting thing didn't really get started until Columbine in the 90s, but details. But would society have responded differently? I'm pretty sure we could bet on arrogant, self-centered, egotistical jackasses who are hell-bent on being right about morality because book said a thing, saying exactly what he's saying now, and everybody else saying, where were you when your team was killing people randomly?
Mm-hmm. Thoughts and prayers, Amber. Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah.
Honest with you, our society is coming apart at the seams. And once you say,
is it though?
I mean, to an extent. Like there's parts of it that keep getting better, but there's parts where, again, assholes like this guy are ripping at the seams as quickly as they can and then going, look, society's coming apart, guys. You're doing it, my guy.
Mm-hmm.
Stop doing that.
Well, it's more that things have changed as far as morality is concerned, because we realize some of the things like, I don't know, slavery and Jim Crow are really wrong. And, you know, this kind of idea that, oh, well, we Christians should be able to just do whatever we want. Like, do whatever we want. Like, no, we're not going to allow you to do that anymore. So you're upset about it. Oh, it's coming apart. It's not. It's just you guys are trying to fire up people to get angry because you're having your privileges taken away from you.
Yeah, they're trying to take their ball and go home, except they're trying to take a ball that isn't theirs and claim it is.
Mm-hmm. You say, well, ethics requires autonomy. That means we can come up with 350 million different systems of ethics because we as autonomous individuals get to just look at the universe and come up with our own way of thinking.
Yeah, and the thing about that is that some of those systems of ethics will allow us to flourish, which is what most people want, including most individuals, and some of them will not.
Did he low-key forget that there's more people than just in the United States?
Probably. I mean,
I think he may have.
I think that's all that exists for this man.
After Jesus wrote the Constitution.
Right.
You can't keep a society together like that, and that's not how this great nation was ever built. I can assure you of that.
No.
What?
It was not. It was built with slavery.
Well, yeah, a lot of it, yeah. And here's the thing, like it's the founding fathers who did build the nation owned slaves. So was that morally right?
Many of them, yeah.
Yeah. Was that morally right? No, of course not.
It's so freaking wild that here in the US we've got people spreading bullshit myths about the pyramids were built by Hebrew slaves, which we know was not true.
It was not, yeah.
But at the same time, we're sweeping under the rug the factual truth that the U.S. Capitol was built by slaves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of that. So what's the difference here? Well, you have to, if you're going to say God's required, then you have to figure out which God. Let me try this one more time. Listen carefully. There is an empty tomb in Jerusalem.
Show me.
You have to explain that.
Yeah. Where is it? Does he maybe think that what's his name found it? Who's that idiot that keeps finding things?
Wyatt. Ron Wyatt?
Ron Wyatt, yeah. Does he think Ron Wyatt found the empty tomb like he found the Ark of the Covenant and the Noah's Ark and every other damn thing out there?
He actually did claim to, yes. It's
yes.
In Jerusalem, there's a random underground spot that's said to be the empty tomb, but we know because there have been records in Jerusalem for a very long time that it was actually like it was a pagan goddess temple, like an Aphrodite shrine or something, and Constantine's mother came to Jerusalem and said, no, clear that out. That's the empty tomb now. So it was declared rather than discovered, so we know that's not it. But Ron Wyatt came along and went, oh, well, I mean, that's obviously it. So there we go, problem solved.
Explain that. Islam has no empty tomb. Muhammad's tomb, everybody knows where Muhammad's tomb is. There is an empty tomb in Jerusalem, and you have to explain how the man who came out of that tomb predicted his own death, burial, and resurrection. When you predict your own death, burial, and resurrection, and then you rise from the dead, you get to tell the rest of us what to do.
Do you?
That is just dogmatic assertion. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are our maker. We need a user's manual right now. It's like everybody in our society has decided, you know what? I'm gonna pick up my iPhone, and I don't care how they designed it to be used. I'm just gonna use it any way I want to. Well,
I mean, you can.
Yeah.
If nobody's gonna stop you, the Apple police aren't gonna show up and be like, you can't use that as a hammer. They're perfectly happy for you to use it as a hammer, because if you smash it, you need to buy a new one.
And you may invalidate the warranty, but you can do it. You know, jailbreak the phone. You can do that. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. You might brick the phone and invalidate the warranty. It's on you. It's such a bad analogy. How are you supposed to be using your iPhone? I don't get that. Like, you do know that you can wipe the operating system and install another one, don't you? You do know you can jailbreak the phone, right? Okay.
Or you could brick it, and now, congratulations, you have a brick. It still works as a brick. It's irreducible complexity.
Well, it's not going to function very well that way, because there are instructions. And without instructions, there's
no instructions for an iPhone, dude. Seriously. You learn it as you go. There's no, what the hell? Who's read the instruction manual for a fucking iPhone, my man? Have you? Is this a man that sits down with the iPhone instruction manual and has read it? I don't even read the terms of service. Why would I read the instruction manual?
But it's better than that. He walks into a room and then, yeah, that's valid.
Absolutely.
I tried once. It was not a pleasant experience.
No, I've had an iPhone once. Once I went to Android, it just, no.
Yeah, it's just, why? Just why? It's intended to hurt you, I think. That's the point. But no, this man, he walks into a room and he's handed a piece of plastic and told that's an iPhone. And then he's handed a book written in Chinese and told that's the instruction manual for how to use the iPhone. He doesn't know, but he's happy to tell you what he thinks the book says about what he thinks is an iPhone.
Right. Wow, this guy, he must be awesome at parties, like, seriously.
We're simply left with, well, utilitarianism. We just want to do the best thing for the most people. Except Stalin didn't do that. And by the way, if you say Christianity...
No, Stalin didn't do that. What's your point? Like, I don't...
Yeah.
Has brought about the most violence. Stalin blew that standard away a long, long time ago.
I'm not sure Stalin did the most violence. I think, well, for a start, he didn't say the most violence. He said the religion's doing the most violence. Christianity has done the most, which is probably true, mostly because it's been around longer than Islam, but it's still probably true, especially if you include all of the, conquistadors and the Spanish going to the New World and violently converting people to Christianity. But Stalin, a lot of it was caused by famines and him mistreating his own people. I'm not sure if you would say that is violence. Maybe it's arguable that it is. Mao definitely, a lot of it was, just starving his people that accounted for the deaths. It doesn't necessarily have to be violent to do the wrong thing, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
But anyway.
like if you're gonna give people like Mao credit for causing famines out of incompetence,
Yeah.
then you also have to give Trump credit for being incompetent in his responses to certain public emergencies.
Yeah.
Which means you now have to accept that God's chosen candidate is personally responsible for the deaths of 1 million Americans.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think they want to do that. So,
No.
you know.
Yeah. And I mean, I think he is responsible for the deaths of over 1 million people.
Oh, yeah,
Just
I
as
do
I think
too.
Stalin's responsible for the deaths of, millions of people. Like, I think Mao was responsible for that. The thing is, just because it's an atheist, we don't go, oh, well, they're right because their religion is the same as mine. No, it's not a religion. And B, just because someone's an atheist doesn't mean they're acting morally. Like, this whole thing about Christianity is they're kind of, well, we've got the morality kind of thing, and then Christians do bad stuff and they have to justify it in some way. It's madness.
Time ago, it's atheism that has brought the most violence to the world, by no question, on that level. Why? Because atheism says there is no God to tell us what is right and wrong, what is just and what is.
Yeah, I think atheism, no. Atheism's just a rejection of a claim. You might say that atheists have brought violence to the world. Sure. I'm not sure atheism was the cause. You haven't made that. Like, this is just another assertion. Atheism is the cause. Was it? It seems to me like generally when you're looking for the cause of violence on humans, humans are the cause.
Uh-huh.
Like, it doesn't matter whether you're religious or whether you're atheist. It seems like just humans in general are the cause. And the cause of all good things happening as well. I don't know.
It's such a weird thing. Like, he may as well say, hey, most people in the modern age die in hospitals. Therefore, doctors are the leading cause of death.
Yeah. Correlation is not causation, my guy.
Is just and what is unjust. We need a standard from outside of ourselves because we are creatures. We are made in the image of God. The only reason that there is any kind of consistency in the moral and ethical systems around the globe is because we are made in the image of God. Read Romans chapter 1. If you've never read Romans chapter 1, I invite you tonight, sit down.
Is this the written on your heart thing?
I believe so, but it's also it's just so funny to me whenever a person of this ilk starts invoking one of Paul's letters, because it always reminds me. And I just came from a wedding earlier today, so I heard somebody read that passage from Corinthians: "Love is patient, love is kind, love does not envy," and so on. And the same people say God is love, and then describe love as a whole list of characteristics that are mutually exclusive with the God they describe.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, it's hilarious. You cannot write satire this funny.
Sit down, read it, and sit back and go, how did that ancient man know so much about us today? He knew it because he was writing inspired scripture and has given us that standard from outside of ourselves.
Well, I greatly respect the men, the image bearers of God to my right, and I was saddened to hear.
I don't know you do, because you've been throwing a lot of shade for someone that's respecting them. Their bags are empty. They've got no stand. It's just. I'm not sure you do. I'm not sure that is true, but I'll take it at its face value.
Saddened to hear Dr. Chatterjee say that he didn't come to fight. That's unfortunate. I did. And that's because truth matters and it's worth fighting for. These are not just philosophical games that we're playing tonight. Mr. Anderson said that he talked about being at the bedside of people and grieving over people dying. He's borrowing again. I hope you caught it. He believes that his ancestors were bacteria. He believes he lives on a continuum of purposeless time and chance acting on matter. People don't shed tears when rocks tumble off a cliff and shatter. So he's borrowing.
They might.
Dr. Chatterjee asked the question of
humans get emotionally attached to all sorts of things. I remember having an emotional reaction as a little child in a high chair. I had a big old plate of spaghetti, and whoever was cooking, the adult, turned around and grabbed a meatball and turned back and put the meatball on top of the spaghetti. And I was excited because I was getting spaghetti and meatballs, and the adult went away. And then the meatball rolled down the side of spaghetti and right off of my high chair. I mean, it was just an inert meatball, and it was just following the laws of physics, but it made me have an emotional reaction.
Sure. And if you think that objects can't give an emotional reaction, go bust my computer. I will have an emotional reaction. Like, screw with my home network, I will have an emotional reaction. No doubt about it. Nobody touches my network but me. That's the only person who's allowed to. It's step on a kid's pet rock, for instance. See what happens.
He asked the question of which God. We answered that. He says we have to justify that, not according to his devout atheism. We said that it was the Christian God, the triune God of Holy Scriptures, that apart from him, you cannot prove anything. Reject his revelation, you become a fool intellectually.
Yeah, this reject him and you become a fool. It's just the most nonsense statement. Well, if you reject Jesus, you've got no foundation for coherence. I win. And if you try to make an argument, this is pre-sup at its best, which is tragic. Because if you try to make an argument, you're using logic and rationality that comes from Jesus. I win.
Yeah, except where does Jesus come from? Yahweh. Where does Yahweh come from? Nil, the great not God and creator of creator gods.
Right.
It's right in the name, so you can't have logic without nil. That makes you a nihilist, my friend.
Yeah. So that's sort of where the level that it's coming from. I mean, the fact that it's parody, these people are using your parody argument seriously, which is just insane. Like, it's just so epistemologically bankrupt. There's no reason. There's no justification. It's just, it's true because it's true because it's true because it's true. And that's why we basically say it's dogmatic assertion.
Intellectually, morally, you have no justification for universal, unchanging, immaterial laws of logic and consistency. Are the descendants of bacteria obligated to hold to these immaterial laws? Are they universal? Have you ever smelled a law of logic, felt one, weighed one, tasted one? If we believe that nothing is, there's no supernatural, as Mr. Anderson believes, there's nothing supernatural, then how do you get immaterial, unchanging, invariant laws with that worldview? No.
So we kind of refer to the laws of logic like we refer to mathematics. It's sort of pseudo-concrete. So it's sort of a language to describe actual things, just the way that the universe works, basically, just these natural properties of the universe. So maths, while it seems like it would be a concrete, it's not. It's just a language to describe the properties of the universe. And I think that the laws of logic are the same. They're just inherent properties of the universe. And we use the laws of logic. It's a descriptive law, like the law of gravity kind of thing. There's no one writing it or anything like that. It's just how it operates. So I think that that's really more what it is. And that's sort of a pseudo-concrete, that it looks like a concrete. It seems like a concrete because we can't violate it, but it's more a description of how the universe acts at a fundamental level, like maths, rather than, some actual concrete in and of itself.
Yeah, I think a big part of this presupposition nonsense is it's a failure to understand mid-level philosophy. Like, their whole thing that they go on and on about, if you let them, is that you have nothing to ground your beliefs in. They're so hung up on grounding, but they're just making up a thing to ground their stuff in.
Yes.
But grounding, that's not how that works. It's not your idea is invalid unless it's grounded. It's more of an Occam's razor kind of thing. An idea with a clear grounding is more likely to be probably reasonable. Like there's so many qualifiers in philosophy. But like, you know, if you think about something that does have a clear grounding, well, what grounds that grounding? You know, it's all just contingent ideas all the way down. We're just trying to put things together in ways that make sense. We're not saying this thing is absolutely justified because it's associated with this other idea. That's not how that works.
Mm-hmm.
Worldview. No, not with their worldview do we need to justify anything or be consistent. With the Christian worldview, you do, because you have a God whose mind is the standard, who cannot lie. That is to say, he cannot engage in logical contradiction. So when we engage in the question of ethics and we are having this conversation expecting consistency, we have to have a standard underneath us, not just social convention and cooperation.
That's a standard underneath us and more reliable than his freaking God. But also, what the hell does he mean by he cannot lie, therefore he cannot articulate a logical contradiction? That's not the same thing.
That isn't the same thing. You can articulate a logical contradiction and not think that you're lying. You can just be wrong. But I suppose he says, well, God can't be wrong either.
And yet, the Bible begs to differ.
Mm-hmm.
This debate, by the way, isn't about the existence of God. It's about whether the Christian God is necessary for ethics. Dr. Chatterjee, when he started with that in his opening, challenging which God and we need to prove God's existence, he isn't in the debate yet, unfortunately. We'd happily debate that. We already have here. If they'd like to do it, we will. He announced some standards. We have a foundation for ethics. We have autonomy. We have reciprocity. He said, the golden rule. I told you they were going to steal from us tonight.
That's an interesting thing to say.
Yeah, considering the golden rule predates Christianity and even Judaism by a long way. Reciprocity's been around forever, and you guys didn't invent it. I know you think you did because the world is only 6,000 years old, according to you idiots, but that is not the case. You didn't invent it. It was in Egypt way before. There's been tons of moral codes that have used it. They're not stealing from your worldview. You're just claiming it is yours. It's like finding out in the wilderness, a bush, and you're like, oh, well, the bush has all these limbs. And you're going, no, but that's my bush, when you have no claim on it whatsoever, and it was there before you even came around. No.
Yeah, it's so wild. It's like, oh, well, that's ours. Can you demonstrate that? Can you show that? No, you're just saying so. Just like everything else you're saying, you're just saying so. You're just saying things. Holy crap! Why is this even a debate?
Because they think that confidence is a substitute for sound epistemology. They think that if they 100% believe it, they can't be wrong. And that is a horrible way to determine what is true.
I wonder if they do believe it, though. Because, I mean, so many precepts we come across, they know they're full of shit. It's an argument of trolling the other guy. It's a hobby for them.
Yeah.
I really wonder if there's any precept. Because, like, to truly believe it, they have to buy all the things they're saying. Which, if they do believe it, then they're telling on themselves as being very, very smooth brain, because the shit they're saying is really dumb.
Well, yeah.
But on the other hand, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, it's Poe's law, isn't it? Like, you cannot tell the difference between a troll and a creationist being serious. You can't tell the difference, because a lot of them will say this like they're absolutely serious and be absolutely adamant that they're being serious. But it seems like a parody of itself.
Tonight.
Yeah, it's wild.
Responsibility. My question is, by what standard? It is always appropriate in a situation like this when you are talking to devout atheists and humanists who put the
devout atheists. There it is again. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Devout
atheism.
Devout to what? To what?
Well, no, of course.
There's no code of conduct. There's no dogma. There's no tenets of atheism. Like
There's a
tenets
David
are the
Tennant.
well, yeah, but I'm not even sure if he's an atheist, but probably actually, because he did do the Good Omens series, so probably. But
If he
there's
wasn't
no
before, he is now.
there's no formal structure to it. That we can't be devout to something when there is no tenet to actually be devout to. It's so weird. It's such a weird way to talk about things.
Who put the descendants of bacteria at the center to ask the question, by what standard? Is it Dr. Chatterjee's mind? Is it his likes and passions and dislikes? Is it the circle and community that he engages with? Where do we draw the circle? Do we draw it over Nazi Germany? Are they the circle we draw it around, or do we draw it larger over Stalin's Russia? Where do we draw the circles, and who's in charge there? Who gets to set the standard, especially considering we're just the descendants of fish in a cosmically indifferent universe? Never forget what bags they brought into the debates. Now,
yeah, this guy, all he had is rhetoric. This is all it is. Like you're grossly strawmanning evolution if you're saying we're just descendants of fish. It's the just there that's doing an incredible amount of heavy lifting. You're passing by billions of years of us being selected for pro-social traits. Like it is madness to believe that, oh, we're just descendants of it. There's no just about it.
Yeah, as Peter went to great lengths to argue on a missing mod chat a few days ago, we're still fish. We're not just the descendants of fish. The law of phylogeny makes it clear we are still fish. So,
lobe-finned fish, to be exact, I believe.
Now, they just simply say it's autonomy, reciprocity, responsibility. Listen, you can't just announce something in a debate like this. Just
the balls on this man. Holy crap.
So what he said, for those who missed it, is you can't just announce something in a debate like this. Think about that. When he's been announcing that their bags are empty, we have the worldview, we have morality, we have objective morality, it comes from God. He is just that. All they've been doing is just announcing stuff. And he goes, you can't just announce stuff and things like this. Yeah, there is an empty tomb. Like, I've said it before, creationists, especially young Earth creationists, have zero sense of self-awareness or irony. They just do not comprehend self-awareness,
It's why I can't debate these guys. Just half the shit they say, infuriating. But everything they say, hilarious. I cannot I can't do it professional. I will die of rapid breathing word. It's gone. Hyperventilation. There it is.
Hyperventilation.
For laughing so hard.
Yeah, or else you'll rupture a spleen or something.
Yeah.
Laughing. Yeah.
Just announcing it doesn't justify it. We need a justification, not just announcing it. It was said that we need caring.
He wants justifications, folks.
Caring and cooperation.
Yeah. You can't just announce something. You've got to justify it. But morality comes from God because there's an empty tomb in Jerusalem. Moving right along. The irony is palatable.
Cooperation, friends, for the descendants of bacteria. Are we obligated to be caring and cooperative towards one another? Says who? Dr. Chatterjee?
Just about everybody. So here's the thing. Self-preservation is almost universal. It's so ubiquitous, it's almost universal. I would go so far as to say it pretty much is a universal among humans, self-preservation. Human self-preservation relies on societal cohesion. It just does. Sometimes that's all you need, is for people to be interested in their own well-being in order for them to be cooperative in society. That's it. Because if they're not cooperative in society, their self-preservation goes way down. That's sometimes all you need. I don't know. It's weird that that isn't enough.
All you need is love.
Yeah. A lot of the time, all you need is love. But apart from that, we do have built into us these feelings of empathy and reciprocity in order to promote pro-social traits and so pro-social cooperation. Antisocial beings generally have lives they're not happy with. And I say generally because I'm not including, there may be some that do, that may be sociopaths or psychopaths that do have, lives that they enjoy. But generally, pro-social cooperation does lead to fulfilling lives, and people want that. That is ubiquitous around the world. Now, people may be fooled into how to get that. They might be told, hey, excuse me, the Jews are evil and they're taking all your stuff and, we've got to do this to them. But that doesn't mean that people have been tricked by propaganda in that point. It's not sort of, actually what they want. Their goal hasn't changed. They've just been lied to about how to get to that goal, right? Because doing that will not get to them to a better life or the Third Reich or whatever they want to do. It won't get them there.
Chatterjee, Mr. Anderson, Dr. Chatterjee says guilt and shame are unhealthy. Guilt and shame are unhealthy? That claim was made in a discussion about ethics in public debate. Guilt and
yeah, it was. Guilt and shame are unhealthy. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What's your point? Psychologists everywhere will say that.
Yeah. What's the problem?
Yeah, I don't.
Shame are unhealthy. I say try saying that to the face of the rapist or the molester or the murderer in a court of law. Tell him that guilt and shame are unhealthy.
Yeah, well, it depends on what you're after. So, especially with shame, right? I mean, excessive guilt is unhealthy. I think guilt is a natural emotion that we feel. May not be unhealthy. It may be unhealthy in large amounts. So when we're talking about shame, if you want, and I've had this conversation with Leo, right, who's like, well, we should shame people like rapists and these horrible people. I understand the need to want to do that. I understand that. But it depends on what your objectives are. Because if you want them to stop doing what they're doing, shame is not a good way to do that. Right? It's like the person who's, say, a serial womanizer and has no regard for the feelings of women. If you shame them, they will just go, well, fine, that's what I am. I'm going to continue to do that if people are going to think of that of me anyway. They internalize that is their behavior is them. That's what it does. Whereas if we say that behavior isn't acceptable, but you can change, not shame them, we get better outcomes. So it depends on what you want the outcome to be. Whether you want to punish someone through shame or whether you want to change their behavior. That's what it all comes down to. But that person who's shamed for being a criminal or a horrible member of society that there's no hope for is going to get out of prison and do exactly the same thing. Because they're going to accept that's who they are. So it depends. Do you want society to be better? That's why it's dangerous. That's why it's destructive. Not just to the person, but society at large. It's horribly destructive.
Yeah, hurts all of us. Hurts innocent people. But
as Jared pointed out, it's incredibly useful for religions to get people to follow them. Because they give you the answer to that shame. We can take it away. Just believe in Jesus.
Yeah, it's parasitic.
Mm-hmm.
Unhealthy. No, it's very healthy. Guilt and shame are very healthy when we are morally responsible image bearers of God. It's absolutely necessary. He said, and I'll just go on the back of Pastor James, you stole my thunder here. Christianity stands as number one in violence in history. Friends, that's laughable. If we just take some of the atheist regimes of the last 100 years.
He didn't say any regimes. He said, like, religions, Christianity is the most violent. They'd probably say that atheism is a religion, but, you know, that's obviously not true.
Want to look at Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, and if you want to ask the question of comparative body count, they win by the ton. And so the question though behind that is this.
True though.
Yeah.
Like, so it isn't factually correct to say Christianity is the most bloody religion. We looked it up last year, and Islam is ahead by several tens of millions compared to Christianity. One of the reasons is because of the Islamic invasion of India, where that action alone killed tens of millions.
Gotcha.
Which that one action, that one, if you want to call it a military action, I don't know if you would, because it was against civilians, but whatever you want to call it, had more casualties than Hitler, Stalin, and Mao all put together.
Behind that is this. Why shouldn't we be violent? Do you see how he's pulling on emotions with his worldview that he doesn't have a right to? He says the Christian church has been violent in history.
He's pulling on emotions. He's pulling on emotions. The irony.
Oh, it's unreal.
Yeah. So this guy who's talked about abortions, who's talked about the trans community, who's made these sort of dog whistles here and there, is like, well, they're arguing from emotion. What is wrong with these people?
Violent in history. My question is, what's wrong with violence? Mr. Anderson announces the utilitarian standard. He says we need to have focus on the well-being of others and the pleasure of others.
Violence isn't necessarily wrong. That's the thing. Like, if someone attacks you, violence is perfectly acceptable. And you would agree with that. If someone comes up to you on the street and like tries to kill you, I think violence is absolutely acceptable in that case. We're talking context here. But, you know, these people don't believe in morality that is relative.
I don't know. It's an interesting conundrum, because the way they present their position as being so absolute, it's difficult to say they even believe in morality. Like, they believe in orders. They believe in being told what to do and simply doing that. Call it right, wrong, it doesn't matter. Just do what you're told.
Obedience,
Yeah, and that kind of abdication of one's own ability to make decisions and come to rational conclusions means that even if you are doing the right thing, it's not because it's moral, it's almost by accident. So I don't know if he could claim to having any morality at all. It goes back to the autonomy thing. He believes he does not have autonomy, so he doesn't get credit for when he does make a moral decision.
Yeah, but I mean, morality is all about ought. So you could make the argument that sort of you ought to be obedient to God, and that forms morality. Like, it is moral to be obedient. I get that is a sort of very shaky way of addressing it, but that could be the case, that all morality is obedience to God. I don't really have a problem with that. That's what you're claiming. The problem is you demonstrating that is the case, rather than just asserting it. And the fact that it's still not objective, and they claim it's objective.
Yeah, which is the entire point of this debate, is Christian morality objective? And they've contributed nothing to that.
No, it's not. Do ethics depend on God? That's the thing. It doesn't have to be objective. That's the thing. It could be subjective. It could be God just saying, hey, this is morality. I determine it to be this. Orders. And it still could be morality. It's just still subjective. And it raises the question, well, how come the guy with the biggest stick creates the morality? that's might makes right.
Mhm.
So, you know, but they claim it's objective, and these guys have on multiple occasions, so it's a moot point. But yeah, technically you could argue subjective morality from God and still win this debate.
The pleasure of others. Again, it doesn't do any good to announce the utilitarian standard, just to simply claim it. You can say that human beings like well-being. Okay, that's nice. They like pleasure. Great. That is the case. Utilitarianism. They like well-being, they like pleasure. Just because that is the case that humans like that doesn't mean it ought to be the case that we pursue it.
So he's talking about the is-ought distinction that Hume went over. So just because something is the case doesn't mean we ought to do it. But really what he was talking about is that it really comes down to ifs, not is, right? So instead of saying, is it the case that we like pleasure? It's if you want to have well-being, then you ought to do this. If you don't care for your own well-being, well, I don't know what to do for you at that point, right? If you don't care about anybody's well-being, including your own, then, I mean, what are you supposed to do with that? But you're not living in a society at that point. You're really just, you know, dropping out of society at that point. If you even care for your own well-being, then there are oughts we can take from that related to society. So these oughts derived with no conditions, basically, so conditionless oughts, are only found in religion where it says you ought to do this no matter what the circumstance, kind of thing. These absolute terms are only found in religion.
Pursue it. Do you know who disagreed at times? Hitler. Do you know who disagreed? The Green River Killer. Do you know who disagreed? All the serial killers.
Yeah, and he appeals to emotion again. Like just this, oh, but other people had different opinions. Yeah. What happened to them? Where are they now?
For the last 20 years.
If Hitler cared about his well-being, he wouldn't do what he was doing. If the Green River Killer cared about their well-being, they wouldn't do what they did. So what? They did not. It did not turn out well for these people.
For the last 20 years, how'd Ted Bundy feel about that? Brothers and sisters, friends, pay close attention to their bag.
Yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up there. I mean, I could go through apparently we've done this before, and I'm an idiot. So yeah, that's my bad. That's my bad totally. I've been thinking a lot about this, the pre-sup arguments, and I think you may be right. I think that, you know, sort of honestly, I think that some pre-subs are doing it just for the troll, and some are doing it because they actually believe it. I think it really does depend on the pre-sub. I think it really does. Just some people seem too sincere. Either that or I'm naive, which could be the case as well. I don't know. You can't enter debates and enter discussions going, well, you don't believe what you believe. Because we get that, right? From even non sort of pre-subs sometimes. Like, oh, no, you actually do believe in God because it's written on your heart. You know, you're just suppressing the truth in your unrighteousness kind of thing. And I think that
I'd love to see an evangelical pre-sup versus an Islamic pre-sup. Just,
oh, wow.
They're both just assuming they're correct and running in circles.
That would be a dumpster fire of dumpster fires. That would probably end in murder, quite frankly, considering how angry most pre-subs
And they
get.
blame the atheists.
And they blame, yeah, absolutely. Well, if we set it up, we would be to blame, I think.
That's fair, yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, I think that it's wrong to assume what people think in any discussion or debate. And yeah, they may be doing it, but that doesn't make me doing it correct also. So I've got to just take what they say at face value of that's what they believe. And yeah, they might be trolling me, but to be honest with you, somebody trolling me says more about them than it does about me. Maybe that's naive of me again, but I think that I think that, hey, if that makes me gullible, fine, that makes me gullible. If that makes me naive, fine, I'm naive. But I I think I would rather be trolled than come to conversations in bad faith, going, "Oh, well, you don't mean what you mean to say." I think I would like at least some kind of justification that people are trolling, and I don't feel that way for pre-subs. I think they're wrong. I think their arguments are absolutely terrible. I think that they can be obnoxious and stuff, but do I think they're lying? I guess some of them are trolling and just lying. Some of them I don't think so, or I don't know if they are. I don't know. It's an interesting question. It is an interesting question, though. Do you have anything to wrap up? I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Like, my memory is terrible, actually. So
No,
I really
worries.
do
It just
apologize.
I couldn't shake that feeling of familiarity, and I'm like, I know pre-subs all make the same argument. I mentioned it a couple of times, but I'm like, this is too similar. What the hell? And then when PC finally dropped by and started dropping playlists, I was like, oh right, I have a playlist of every debate that Mark and I have done together. So I went to it and I scrolled all the way to the bottom, and I'm like, oh, there it is. Yeah. It wasn't a similar debate. It's the same debate.
Yeah,
So
I'm
yeah,
so
I
sorry.
didn't fully remember it either.
Well, that's okay. But this is the thing. Like, I saw it up and I sort of edited it, and it still didn't trigger for me. I felt like I was watching it for the first time. So, whoops. Which is more an indictment of my memory. There's a reason why I live by my calendar, and I, if it's not in my calendar, I maybe I have memory issues. Maybe I'm getting old. I'm getting old, Ember.
It's the senility.
It's the senility. I'll be hanging out with Biden pretty soon. I'm sorry. Too soon? Too soon?
I know Knee's got it. Let's do it again. Let's make it an anniversary thing. Do it every year, and that'll let us, compare how we've developed in the past year.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good excuse. Yeah, well, I can tell you my memory's getting worse. So there you go. That's what it's told me about me. I'm so sorry, everybody, but I did do it in good faith kind of thing, or I meant to do something. Yeah. Anyway, that's okay. That's all right. I'll just put it aside, bring it up next year.
That's right.
I'll probably be a drooling vegetable by then, but
only if you keep arguing with pre-subs.
Well, I was just about to say, maybe I'll be able to have a coherent conversation with the pre-sub at that point. But thank you so much, Ember, and thank you everybody for joining me in this sort of slightly repetitive deja vu session. Slightly repetitive, very repetitive deja vu session. I have no idea what I said in the last one. Like, no idea. It's a bit of a worry, actually. It is a bit of a worry. Maybe I need to.
I'm not sure either. Oh, hey, there's Missing Mod. We were just talking about you, kind of. Not really, but you were referenced.
Was she?
Yeah.
Oh.
When I was talking about the law of phylogeny.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The last time I was in a Missing Mod chat, Peter was on the panel, and we were arguing that, we're still fish.
In a certain way. I mean, it's sort of about lineages, not about sort of what you are right now, because there's no such thing as fish.
That's true. I know, and that's the evolution side of trolling people, is we can say both of those things, and from a certain point of view, they're both true.
Correct. Like, fish is just a categorization for certain organisms, and it doesn't really have a there's no real thing such as a fish. Like, there's so many different orders and genuses of piscenes, basically, that there's no such category as a fish, basically. So that's what one of the premier, like, what is it, piscatology, fish study of fish, what's that called? Is it
Pesca maybe? I only know because
it's
I know
ichthyology.
pescatarian.
No, it's ichthyology.
Oh yes, the
ichthyology.
ickies.
Yeah.
The ickies.
Ichthyology. So the leading ichthyologist who studied fish for like half a century kind of thing came to the conclusion there's no such thing as a fish. It's kind of
David Starr Jordan.
Yeah, it's kind of a category thing rather than an actual biological term. It's just interesting. But thank you
Also,
for joining.
fun
Yeah.
to tease Dr. Tapioca Weasel with, because, you know, as you know, he's a physicist, but he was based in Stanford, which got put on the map because of David Starr Jordan.
Right. Well, I mean, Dr. Tap, he still doesn't know how magnets work, so
It's true.
I can't. Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much, Ember. And again, I apologize, but yeah, we're going to go. And anything coming up, anything that you want to tell people about, apart from transposition, should be on.
Yeah. Tomorrow I've got my normal Sunday show. I've been doing, well, this is the second episode, but I've been doing a series now that Doc Dino is back online, still off in Dig Site land, but back online. Doc Dino's been joining me to refute some creationist nonsense, and it's been a lot of fun. That starts at 8 p.m. Eastern and goes till 9:30 when Maya's show starts. I just hand right off to Maya. So that's tomorrow. Transpositions, the live show is on Thursdays, the same time as Fundamentalist Fails here. So yeah, it's a thing, but you know, it's YouTube. You can watch the VOD after the fact. So if you watch here, you can go there later. If you go there, come here later. Whatever. And then always the possibility of random live streams. Lately I've been dropping regular videos on Tuesdays. YouTube says that's the best time to do it. So there should be another one this Tuesday because I had to substitute in one from the vault last Tuesday. And then next Saturday we actually will be at my channel. I have a debate picked out already, but I'm thinking about changing it because I have to actually look at it. But a cool debate just happened today that may supplant that one. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, either way, it'll be fun.
Fantastic. Oh, that's awesome. Well, don't forget, be kind to yourself, be kind to each other. You don't need a God for morality, or all you need is an understanding of what you want your life to be. If you do want a life that is well and a life that is fulfilling, then there's certain things we should ought to do to get to that. And one of those is caring for the people around you, caring for society, using empathy, using reciprocity. It's not that hard, and you don't need a God for it. But do take care, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, people.